A world gone insane. An upside-down civilization that cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Today's show is brought to you by Butcher Box Meats. For $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free salmon, go to butcherbox.com/DGH and enter the promo code DGH. That's right, $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free salmon. Go to butcherbox.com/DGH and enter the promo code DGH. Welcome all to Season 8 of the Dana Gould Hour podcast. And what a way to kick off the new season. 2 phenomenal guests. Author, raconteur, bon vivant, and showbiz gadfly Kliph Nesteroff is here, as well as a man who fits all of those same appellations as well, Mike Carano. We're going to do an interesting thing. Instead of hopscotching the interviews the way we normally do, cutting back and forth, we're going to run both interviews in their entirety. First Kliph and then Mike, for 2 reasons. One, their voices are pretty similar, and the 2 conversations ended up being so wildly divergent that it would be somewhat schizophrenic to go back and forth. The Kliph interview is very lighthearted and silly, and the one with Mike went to some groovy, dark places. So I'm just going to let them run in their entirety. So just a couple of things before we get going. As per usual, I am busy as a bee. On February 1st, I will be in Seattle, Washington at the Triple Door with my friend Kathy Sorbo and the Zuma Bella Trio. People always come up to me and they go, "Hey, Dana, when can I see you performing in Los Angeles?" Well, on February 22nd, I will be at the Melrose Improv, headlining a show. This is exactly the show that you see when I go on the road, right here in Los Angeles, in your own backyard. The Melrose Improvisation on Friday, February 22nd. And on February 23rd, I will be in beautiful Santa Barbara, California, with the lovely and talented Eliza Skinner. And we will be performing together at the Brazil Arts Cafe. Or, as I like to say, the Brazil Arts Cafe. And in February 27th, 28th, and March 1st and 2nd, I will be at Cap City in beautiful Austin, Texas. For details on all of this, you can go to goodoldanagould.com, where you can find our Patreon feature. We have a new Patreon or Patreon feature where for $5 a month, you get extra content. You get some video content. You get some audio content that's left off the show. Maybe there'll be a piece on the show that I edit a lot. I'll just put it up raw. There'll be some extra segments there. We just try to make it worth your while to contribute. It helps us keep the lights on. The show costs a couple grand an episode to make after I've paid everybody, which is fine, but we'd like to at least break even here at the old podcast. So the Patreon feature helps, or Patreon. I don't know what it is. But it's $5 and you get a simple thing. There are no intricate levels. $5 a month gets you the title Dana Gould Hour Sky Cadet. And you can find that at danagould.com. One last thing before we go. A lot of people have asked about the Stand Against Evil, my little show on IFC. Stand Against Evil, I am sad to report, will not be returning for a 4th season. It had a great run, 3 seasons, and it's not coming back. Will it show up in some other form on some other network someday? Maybe. But right now, as we like to say, it's dead as Kelsey's nuts. But I'm very proud of the show. It's fantastic cast. John McGinley, Janet Varney, Nate Mooney, Deborah Baker Jr., our great directors, Eben Schletter, our great music person, Autonomous Effects, all the people that worked on the show. I'm leaving a lot of people out. This isn't the official format for my thank you. But I thought everybody did a great job. The show's on Hulu. You can enjoy it. And it ain't coming back anytime soon. But that is, as they say, showbiz, and I'm already working on some other cool crap that hopefully will come your way. Hopefully we'll find a way to cram it down your gullet in 2019. But in the meantime, why don't we just do a podcast, shall we? It's season 8. As we like to say, it's on to our filthy business.
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
The Dana Gould Hour. Free and worth it.
It is a cold, gray, wet January day high atop the Mulholland Drive view shelf here in what was once sunny Southern California. It's a gray, foggy day. You can't see anything. And frankly, I love it. I am joined today by what we like to call a friend of the show, a man who is proudly not American. Kliph Nesteroff is here.
Hey, Dana. It's nice to be here in the lair.
Author of the book The Comedians, now in paperback.
Now in paperback, also available on Audible, although not a lot of people dislike the audiobook.
Really?
I made a big mistake. I made a judgment call in the booth while we were recording. And as I did it, I was like, am I ruining the audiobook? Whenever I talk about Jack Carter, I can't help but do Jack
Sure,
Carter's
that's
voice.
understandable.
And so I don't do voices or impressions. And when you do an audiobook, I ask the engineer, I go, do you change your voice when it's like one person or
Yeah.
another? He goes, no, not really. Sometimes you change the pitch so people
Right.
know that it's a quote. And I was like, okay, so I'll just change the pitch. And then I'm reading the audiobook. And then Jack Carter said, fuck you, you scumbag!
Yeah, it's like you have
I
to.
couldn't help it. So a lot of people complain that out of nowhere, the author starts screaming.
Is it unabridged?
Unabridged, yeah.
And how long did that take to record?
Oh, a couple weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how much? Because Steven Weber did the unabridged It.
Oh, wow.
And it must have taken him like 4 months.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like doing any kind of voiceover stuff. You got to do multiple takes. You flub lines, you know.
Really? And your voice gets tired. I mean, you can only do like 2 hours. And then
You get tired. You have to take breaks. You learn after it comes out and it's reviewed that you've been pronouncing everything wrong. So there's a lot of...
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough job. Doing those, especially those big tomes.
Yeah, I
That's
wasn't
hard.
supposed to do my own. Anthony Jeselnik wanted to do it, and then I don't know if he was privy to it or not, but then his manager started making demands, and Audible was like, nah, it's just an audiobook here.
You do get persnickety.
Mm-hmm. No, I get that too. I mean, when I travel, I have conditions. If I'm not going first class, then I have to be at the front of the plane, as close to the front of the plane, far from the bathroom, closest to the exit so I can get the fuck off as soon as we land. You know?
Yeah.
All those types of things. And then if I'm doing a festival, not if I'm just doing a one-nighter, but if I have to go somewhere for several days, I usually ask them, this is my one eccentric thing, is I ask them to rent me a bicycle.
Janet Varney also is a big bicyclist.
So I'm not one of these people you see in traffic yelling at the traffic.
Yeah, and there's a rule that the more bicycle equipment the person is wearing, the bigger an asshole they are.
Right. Yeah. I don't dress like that. I dress the way I'm dressed right now when I ride a bike.
Yeah.
Even if I go long distances, which sometimes I do.
If you have the dentist's mirror attached to your headgear, you should not be out among the public. You should be on bicyclist island. You should be on the island of Peloton.
No. The spandex should not be allowed in public, period. That's a private matter.
I was driving down Mulholland one day, and there was this guy, like lime green lycra, like the whole deal. And I just like that, like, oh, look at that douchebag.
Yeah.
Then I drove past him, Steve Martin.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't scream it.
Of course, Robin Williams was a big cyclist.
Yeah, Robin loved riding. Loved riding.
You'd see him in Vancouver all the time in his spandex and helmet, at a hot dog stand, eating a hot dog on the break from the bike ride. But I love it. I'm not militant about cycling at all. I only bike, where there's minimal traffic. I like biking.
But I would think it'd be good for your head.
It's mentally a great thing. Well, especially if you're biking in nature. Biking in Los Angeles is not always great for your head, but if you can get out, sometimes I would take the train out to Lancaster and then hop on a bus and go to Death Valley and bike in Death Valley or the Alabama
But
Hills.
isn't that dangerous?
Well, it depends how far you're going. If you're going into the deep recesses of the desert with no,
because you can die. Like I always think, if I was driving a car through Death Valley, if your car breaks down, you could die.
Well, it depends what time of year. I mean, the desert has winter as well, so it's not as hot as it is in August.
Yeah.
So if you bike in Death Valley in April and May, it's pretty nice. Also depends on the time of day.
Right.
But no, I've done it. I had no issues. Yeah. I actually brought all this water with me because I was paranoid of running out of water.
I would be too. Yeah.
So I was weighed down with jugs of water. It was and it turns out I had way too much water.
Well, that's good.
But
yeah, no, I would. It's very good for your head. The other night, I went to this thing called goat yoga, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's goat yoga. You go to this, of all places, naturally, you go to a brewery in Echo Park. There's a micro brewery in Echo Park.
Yeah.
And they have goat yoga, which is a yoga class where goats walk around while you're doing yoga and will walk over you and jump on you. And it was the greatest thing I've done this year.
I have no words.
It's hilarious. It's really fun. The goats are, they're little. They're not giant, awful goats. They're like the size of a small dog.
Do not let Fox News get wind of this because
typical LA hippies.
The premise is that it's soothing, that it's calming. What is the they're just, therapy goats? Where do the goats come from? They got to drive goats in from a farm? They do stand on you?
They do. Yeah, they get right on you,
like a mountain goat would stand on a rock on a mountaintop.
They have guides that walk them around and they'll hold food up and they'll just
what the fuck?
Yeah,
is this a thing?
Your reaction is priceless.
I cannot believe this is a thing.
Yeah.
Is this the only place in the world that does this, or is this a well-known medical technique that I've never heard of?
I hope.
Well, where I'm living, there's lots of goats and sheep around. Not on my property, but in the area where I'm in Canada, I go for a bike ride and I bike past goats and sheep all the time.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. Your Instagram handle is Classic Showbiz.
Yeah,
you write about showbiz.
Yeah,
you're a performer. You do all this stuff.
Yep.
But currently, you live in literally the boonies.
Yeah.
You have the sort of and you can worse than Hunter S. Thompson. You really are out there.
I'm very rural. I'm in Canada and people.
You're from Canada.
I'm from Canada.
Which makes you Canadian.
Yes. And I still live here in Hollywood, but I gave up my apartment 3 months ago and put all my stuff in storage. I'll be back. But you guys got to sort shit out first, I think.
We need a couple years. Hopefully 2.
And I needed to make sure that my Canadian infrastructure is established so that when the time comes, when Plan B happens, I'm set up.
Right.
Not just as a place to live, but work, Yeah. And so I like the idea, I'm very privileged in that sense that I can belong to 2 countries right now.
When we change our parties to Republican and super Republican.
Yeah. Oh God. Even before all this happened, when I moved to America at the end of 2012, just by virtue of being from Canada, I was already a communist by comparison to mainstream American politics. Things that are controversial here are not controversial there. Healthcare is not a controversy. It would never be a controversy. We just went through several years of a super right-wing prime minister in Canada, and not even he would dare fuck with the healthcare. They'll rant and rave every right-wing thing imaginable except for the healthcare. So
Khrushchev was right in a sense about capitalism spending itself to death, but not in the way it's eating itself, because the super capitalists, America is not a country; it's an economy with an army, and everything is boiled down to the profit motive. And this president, who is nothing if not an amoral, is a prototypical amoral businessman, views everything transactionally. It's like, the Saudis murdered a guy. Yeah, I don't know, maybe not. We have a deal going with them. Yeah. What's the money? Where's the money in it? You know? Yeah. I wish, the Roe v. Wade would go away if somebody would just get out and go, do you know how much money abortions make? Do you know how much money abortions put into our economy? And then it would be, then it would be like the great, Planned Parenthood would be painted red, white, and blue.
Because there's certain people, like when Michael...
And that's the whole point with healthcare. It's like, we don't use it we don't see it as a profit center.
Right. Healthcare in Canada, it does not go back to the start of Canada at all. It started in the late 60s. And for the longest time, when people were advocating for universal healthcare in Canada in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it was framed the same way that it's sort of framed here, more or less. It was framed as a communist conspiracy.
Sure.
That the communists were trying to take over healthcare and so that's how businessmen...
And make us all healthy.
Yeah, make us all healthy. So they had a pilot program in Saskatchewan in the 1950s, and that province, which is like a state in America,
right, yes,
was the first place to get health care in Canada. It was a microcosm. It was a test ground to see if it would work, universal health care just in this province. And then when it was proven to be successful, then it went nationwide. It took a long time. And that system in Saskatchewan is really interesting because it is where...
It will never happen here.
Well, one of the pilot programs of socialized medicine in Canada back in the early 50s was this place called the Weyburn Hospital, and this guy, Dr. Humphrey Osmond. Dr. Humphrey Osmond is the guy who coined or invented the word psychedelic.
That's fantastic.
He was running a clinic to treat hardened alcoholics, and they would administer LSD to get them off of booze. And it had something insane, like an 80%
That's amazing.
80% success rate of guys who could never get...
I'm addicted to porn. Get him a hooker.
Yeah. But it worked. It worked. And that was those days, it was brand new. It was legal. It wasn't controversial. But that was one of the pilot programs for this universal healthcare that we have
today.
But
how would LSD cure your alcoholism?
Spiritual epiphanies.
Oh, okay.
It was about... going into yourself, the source of your trauma, the source of why you're drinking in the first place.
Oh, interesting.
Addressing the trauma and coming out of it a new person.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and these were not like mild LSD doses. These were like brain-breaking doses. Right. But when they looked at all the people who had gone through this, over 500 people did this program, and they came up with these statistics that 70%, something like 70% stayed sober for the rest of their lives. They did follow-up studies later. Other people were sober for a year and then relapsed. And then the rest continued to drink, but drink considerably less. So in every category, it had a success rate.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was really fascinating. And he was friends with Aldous Huxley, and he was the guy who hooked Aldous Huxley up with psychedelics for the first time, Dr. Humphrey Osmond.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the inception, the cradle of Canadian healthcare is LSD, Aldous Huxley, and the coining of the phrase psychedelic.
But so you grew up in...
I grew up in the Slocan Valley in British Columbia. Which is, its main claim to fame is that in the late 60s, when hippies in America were dodging the draft and going to Canada,
right?
Well, where did they go? Where did they end up? And whatever became of them? Well, they all settled in this area where I grew up.
And why is it on the West? Why did they end up where you grew up?
So the reason the hippies settled there...
Yeah, I meant this town that you were talking about.
...is because it's a very rural area and they could set up communes because that was still a big thing in the late 60s. So even to this day, there's still communes in the area where I grew up, and there's a hippie culture that is not the same obnoxious
and communes sounds pernicious.
Yeah.
But it's just a bunch of roommates.
Yeah, yeah. and then like hardened responsibilities, though.
Yeah.
Like if you don't wash the dishes, you get kicked out.
Yeah,
It's not the same as your apartment. But
right.
And I did not grow up on a commune, but in elementary school and junior high school, all my classmates, most of them, were the children of draft dodgers. And those draft dodgers are still there to this day. They have lives and careers and whatever. And that influenced the culture there. So everything's sort of hippy-dippy, but not in a bad way.
And was there ever amnesty for those people? Did Clinton do it? Or
from the United States?
Yeah.
That I don't know. But I do know that in Canada, like it was, please come to Canada and we will give you asylum.
Right.
Pierre Trudeau famously said, we'll grant asylum to any draft dodgers seeking it to avoid the
Vietnam War. Yeah. I don't know if it was ever granted. I think that was...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But there's some well-known scholars who were draft dodgers from the States who became well-known in Canada. There's people from all over, that are in Toronto or Vancouver or wherever. But my region specifically, where I grew up, was famously where all these sort of pacifists settled. And then ironically, my lineage, my parents, my grandparents, they were all pacifists, Russian pacifists who fled Russia in the 1890s when they were being conscripted by some czar to go to war. They didn't believe in killing another person. They were going to go to the...
Oh, I believe in that. I'm not for war, but...
Yeah, right. So they were going to go to prison. Leo Tolstoy, who was already wealthy at the time, sympathized with their cause, bankrolled my family's exodus to Canada in the 1890s. So they were pacifists, settled in this region, and then just total coincidence, in the late 60s, these pacifists from the United States came to Canada. So they all settled in the same area, these Russian pacifists and these hippie pacifists. So in my school, growing up as a kid, children of Russian pacifists, children of hippie pacifists, and we hated each other's guts.
Sure.
And war with each other.
And were they really pacifists, or did they just didn't want to get shot for no real good reason?
Well, they go together, I think, because
there's a lot of pacifist implies a lack of, I think there's a healthy, and I'm not begrudging it. I'm glad I had to make that decision. There's there's some good old primal lizard brain self-interest involved.
Well, definitely. But I mean, nobody wants to kill another person, let alone be killed, right?
Well, that doesn't apply to everybody, obviously.
It doesn't apply to everybody, obviously. But if you're walking through a bad neighborhood, somebody might say, geez, you're going to get killed. You walk down, I go, really? It's like effort to kill somebody. Now you got a body on your hands. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with the body? You got to premeditate when you kill people.
A friend of mine whose dad was in World War II, he was born very late in his dad's life. And he said his dad was older. He was kind of a quiet guy. And one day they were just sitting around and talking. I don't know the specifics, but his dad was just kind of staring off into space. And my friend goes, what are you thinking about? And he goes, my dad just looked at me, he goes, German soldier taking a piss by a tree, looked up, never saw it coming.
Oh my God. Good Lord.
That was like the only thing he said
Jeez.
Ever about his experience in the war.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I knew a lot of drug addicts in Vancouver when I lived there, and a lot of them were veterans. And they had sordid stories. So they either saw something or did something they couldn't live with. And in other cases, they had spine-shattering injuries that they couldn't get proper medical care for and ended up addicted to heroin. So I can't even imagine being in a war zone. I would never be able to do it. I just can't even.
No, it boggles my mind. But so you grew up in British Columbia, but when did your obsession with American show business start?
Well, I was in such an isolated rural area that we couldn't get television.
What were the jobs that people are going to have?
Lumber.
Okay.
Lumber, sawmill, pulp mill, mills. And just like America.
Or it would be great if it was like lumber, sawmills, burlesque.
That's right. It's a region much like any industrial area in America where there was an industry, everybody had a job. Now the industry is gone. Right. So in Canada,
now why is lumber gone?
The trees are gone.
Oh, they literally just stripped it.
Yeah, and in the east,
well, that's their fault.
And same thing in the East Coast with fishing in Canada was the big thing. Now all the fish are gone
because of deep drag and
yeah, exactly. So now all that stuff is done with. So everybody's kind of
Service
up in
economy?
arms. Marijuana was the biggest thing where I grew up in terms of economy. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, illegally, but I'm literally thousands and thousands of people growing marijuana, giant fields, and the RCMP coming after them with helicopters and burning everything, and then starting all over,
and then hovering over it as it burns.
yeah. That's right. So that was like the big economy. My dad was an elementary school teacher, and my mom worked by there was a dam on the river there. That's where the Columbia River starts. The mountains are super tall, super vast around there, and that's where the Columbia River starts. And there's these incredibly fast rivers in the spring when the snow melts. So we had one television station, the CBC, growing up, and we did not have a town nearby, so there was no a culture of anything. So I was just at the mercy of whatever the CBC fed me, which was very, very little. Wayne and Schuster reruns, and that was it. In terms of comedy, that was it.
Wow.
Until I was, I guess, 7 years old, The Kids in the Hall came out, and my whole life changed. Because I was like, what the fuck? Like, for the first time, you weren't, like, kind of forcing yourself to laugh.
I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail when I was like 9. Mm-hmm. And like at 9 years old, like I know, like, oh, this is something different.
And isn't that funny?
No pun intended.
And it's like
this is something completely different.
And it was adult comedy that spoke to a 9-year-old in your case, and adult comedy that spoke to a 7-year-old in my case. And I think that's really important because a lot of entertainment, especially for kids, is stupid. It talks down.
Yeah.
The Muppets didn't. The Muppets were smart.
The Muppets were good.
And so that was my first exposure.
And part of it is not to get like too inside comedy, but none of those things, the Muppets, Kids in the Hall, or Monty Python, they didn't seem like they cared if you laughed or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they created their own world.
Yeah. And it was just like, we're doing this thing. You can enjoy it or not. Yeah. Up to you.
So I had seen the Muppet Show. CBC,
there was no sweat. They never broke a sweat in that regard.
Absolutely. CBC used to show the Muppet Show in syndication every weekday afternoon. So I saw that. And then when I was 5 years old, the closest town to where we grew up was called Nelson, British Columbia, which is where I am right now.
We should say named after the American actress Bridget Nelson.
Yes, of course. And so we didn't go to town more than once a week. We'd go for groceries on the weekend, and then we'd stay out in a rural area the rest of the week. And so I couldn't rent a movie because it would mean we'd have to go back to town 2 days in a row to return it.
Oh, God.
So I didn't get...
So how long of a trip was it into Nelson?
It was only a half hour.
God damn it. That's like going to the corner now.
Yeah. You mean you're stuck in traffic longer than a half hour in Los Angeles every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
But my mom, that was her mentality.
It's a different world.
But then in 1985, for pretty much definitely for the first time and maybe for the last time, they were filming a movie in Nelson. And my mom and my dad and all of us were like, let's go watch them make a movie. Because when you live in the middle of nowhere, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
The movie was Roxanne, starring Steve Martin, written by Steve Martin. Well, Steve Martin, I knew who he was because he had hosted The Muppet Show. And I was like, oh my God, the guy from The Muppet Show. He knows The Muppets.
You only knew him from The Muppet Show.
The only point of reference, yeah.
And this is the mid-'80s.
1984, 85, yeah.
Wow. That is amazing.
But I was like a 4 or 5 year old guy.
Yeah. I saw it on a date.
We went into town to watch them film this. I didn't know who these people were. Shelley Duvall, Michael J. Pollard.
Right. He's in that. I love Michael J. Pollard.
The opening scene where there's like the sword jousting with tennis rackets, and it's Kevin Nealon and Rich Scheidner, who are both stand-up comics. Didn't know who any of these people were at the time, but Steve Martin with that prosthetic nose, and the entire town was on the sidelines watching this being filmed. I mean, there was like 1,000 people there just watching.
Yeah.
And for me, that was so exciting. It was so interesting to see this and seeing him, his stunt double do these acrobatics where he's jumping up and down this house and one scene where they're guiding a cow down Main Street and they light a building on fire, to film this fire sequence. It was the most exciting thing imaginable.
Yeah, like watching a building go up.
Yeah, so that was my first exposure of any kind to show business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Was Steve Martin filming Roxanne.
Yeah, not bad.
In my hometown. But then we go back to the woods and, you don't know if that movie's ever going to come out. We don't see any commercials for it. We have one TV channel. Wow. So it was still kind of isolating. What we did have, and this is real backwoods, was at nighttime, we could get radio stations. When it gets dark on an AM dial, you can get thousands of radio stations.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
It's stupid scientific, not legalese, but scientificalese. I think the ionosphere, something about radio waves bounce off of white light and they can't travel very far. When it gets dark and there's no white light, radio waves can go as far as they want.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Until they're intercepted by another radio.
I knew it
wave.
has something to do with the ionosphere.
Something like that, yeah. I don't even know what ionosphere
I knew it
means.
had something to do with the ionosphere. Continue.
Yeah. But so
I knew it had to be the ionosphere.
So during the daytime, we only get one radio station, CBC Radio, and we only get one TV station at all times, CBC Television. But at nighttime, we could get hundreds of radio channels from all over America. And so that was my window into this other universe. After 9 p.m., between 9 and 4 a.m., I'm like, well, what's Salt Lake City, Utah? What's Coeur d'Alene, Idaho?
Right.
You know? And
wow.
There used to be a show called When Radio Was. It was hosted by Art Fleming, the original host of Jeopardy.
By the way, When Radio Was is still a show.
Really?
It's now hosted by, I want to say,
I bet it's hosted by a guy who wears suspenders.
Yeah, it's hosted by, I'm getting the name wrong, but it's Glenn Bell or something like that. When Radio Was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still on the dial.
Yeah.
I still listen to it.
Yeah, so that would come in, and they would play things like the Mel Blanc show.
Yeah.
And here I am, I'm 5-6 years old. I love cartoons, and so I was like, oh my God, he has his own show. Mel Blanc is doing all those voices. And
what's amazing is you're not far from the United States geographically.
Right.
But because of technology, the United States is an ocean of entertainment, and you're getting like a one hose.
Right.
Right. That much.
Right. And the other thing was you'd be listening to something, maybe it was Mel Blanc or whatever, and then right in the middle of the show, you're listening to it's gone. And you're like, no! So just these little isolated glimpses into this other world. So because I was isolated, because I didn't have access to these things, eventually I would overcompensate. When I finally had access to these things, I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to consume everything, and inadvertently, accidentally became an armchair expert about these things.
Interesting.
But it was really overcompensating. And there was a gas station maybe 15 minutes away from where I grew up. And that was sort of the center of culture, was the gas station. It was sort of like Richard Linklater's Suburbia, where you go and hang out at the gas station. And they had a little plastic pyramid with videos, VHS on one side, beta on the other side, that you could rent. You were at the mercy of the curator of the gas station, what movies you were going to watch. And
wow.
I told Larry this story. When I was 14, they had Ed Wood at the gas station.
Oh, that's funny.
And they had Pulp Fiction, same year. And so I rented those two, and I watched both of them. I loved both of them.
Yeah, those are the two best movies of 1994.
And they're both hat tips. They're both honoring a different era of cinema.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find 50s B movies. I wanted to find monster movies. I wanted to find flying saucer movies. And I wanted to find 70s action movies and 70s blaxploitation movies. And so that sent me on this new sort of jog. And by that point...
But did you know that did you know what Pulp Fiction was referencing? Ed Wood, it's easy to extrapolate.
I think I did, because at that point, 1994, it was the same year that we finally got cable.
Okay.
Where we lived, you couldn't get cable if you wanted it, because the cable company would not service that area. It was too far away.
Yeah, it just wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So finally, they offered rural cable service. And cable television in Canada is a different concept than cable television in the States. In the States, cable television means HBO. It means Showtime. It means Comedy Central. In Canada, cable television means you get ABC, NBC, CBS, American networks, which you can't get without cable.
But it's just network television. You're watching like, finally we have cable. I can watch The Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
No. For me, it was a revelation, because finally I could see Late Night with David Letterman.
Oh, that's
I could
true.
finally see Saturday Night Live. I could see all these things I'd heard of, but always kind of felt like shit because I couldn't see.
Yeah, and I would think, like, if you do get the kids in the hall, then getting Letterman on a nightly basis must have been like, whoa.
Actually, you know what? I now remember when we got cable for the first time. It was the week that Johnny Carson retired.
Oh, wow.
So I saw Johnny Carson's last episode. It was the only episode I ever saw live, like in real time, you know what I mean, as opposed to watching on YouTube years later. And unfortunately, that was like the one episode they released on VHS and DVD.
Sure.
And it was the most accessible episode ever.
Yeah, I remember like when Late Night with David Letterman came on. I mean, I grew up in America. I used to just eyeball deep and all this stuff all the time. But Letterman, Saturday Night Live in the 70s was so good. And like, you know, I was, I'm a little bit older than you. Like when Saturday Night Live first exploded and Steve Martin exploded simultaneously. And they were very much of a piece.
Right.
And it was just this new kind of comedy. And they were both huge and they were ubiquitous. So, you know, it's like everybody had the 45 King Tut.
Right.
Everybody had it. Everybody had the Blues Brothers album. Everybody had it.
Right.
And then when the original SNL ended, it sucked. It came back in 1980 and it was terrible.
Right.
And there was this weird, like 80, 81. And the only cool thing on television around like 1981 was Night Flight on USA. I think that had started by then. And Night Flight would just show Devo videos and Blondie videos.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, it's, you can watch it now. I think IFC runs it. It would show you new punk and new wave culture. And that was interesting and galvanizing. And then in 82, Late Night with David Letterman starts. And that sort of like, that was like, oh, this is good. Mm-hmm. And that started a whole new sort of school.
When we first got cable and the late night wars were happening, A&E, which we got on our cable package, was showing reruns of Late Night with David Letterman, 2 different episodes every day.
Wow.
One at 9 a.m. and one at 4 p.m. And so I got to catch up on everything I had ever missed. And really, I watched TV for like 5 years in my mom's basement for my teenage years. I just watched all this shit I had heard about, never got a chance to see. There was a children's channel in Canada called YTV that showed old TV shows all the time, that show Get Smart at 2 a.m, Rocky and Bullwinkle at 2:30 a.m. And that's when the sort of historian part of me started to occur, because in the credits of Get Smart, there was a guy named Chris Hayward. It said, written by Chris Hayward. Then in the credits of Rocky and Bullwinkle, which came on right after, it said, written by Chris Hayward. And I was like, who's Chris Hayward? So those things started to fire for me for the first time. And I just started to consume everything. You know, that same gas station where I'd rent movies also sold Mad Magazine. And when I was a boy, I would read Mad Magazine, read all these parodies and references to things I didn't know what they were parodies or references to, you know. Also, when I was 6 years old,
Do you have an easy pull of your favorite Mad Magazine parody title?
I don't, but the one that for whatever reason, whenever I'm just referencing it, is An Officer and a Gentile.
Oh, great.
Not only did I not know what an officer was. Yes, exactly. I didn't know the movie or what a Gentile was.
Mine was the Poop Side Down Adventure instead of the Poseidon Adventure.
Oh, God. I liked anyone.
Upside down? Yeah. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It sounds like something that would happen to a baby.
Let's call Dick DiBartolo and get him to answer for some of these things.
I think Jake Hogan's dad wrote the Poopside Down Adventure.
Arnie. Yeah. Arnie also wrote on the sitcom Empty Nest, another one of those connections that I remember seeing the credits in Mad
Arnie
Magazine
Hogan,
as well.
Yeah, and I think it was also a Carol Burnett. All those guys wrote the Carol Burnett show.
Yeah. You know,
which I remember thinking was so fucking funny when I was a kid. And now I watch it on MeTV, and I'm like looking at like,
Carol Burnett show is so interesting because it was 50s style comedy.
Yes,
in the 1970s, but it was fronted by a woman. The first time ever that a show like this had been fronted by a woman. So in a way, it belonged to the new era and the modern era. But at the same time, the comedy was old fashioned.
That's really true. It was like the sha-na-na of television comedy.
Yeah.
Actually, this is the old thing. Yeah, it was very much a show of shows.
Yeah,
type of sketches.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it was fronted by a woman. And like I was a kid, it was the greatest thing on television. Like and the fact that you could see them, like you're not supposed to see them make each other laugh. Like that would be like so verboten. Like, oh my God, they're cracking each other up.
I remember seeing episodes of the Carol Burnett show that used to scare me. They did a sci-fi episode, and she was like painted silver or something, or a character was. And I remember being terrified.
Oh, really?
And I couldn't watch the Carol Burnett show for a while. Yeah, because I thought it was always scary.
That's so funny. You say that she was painted a different color and that scared you. What scared me as a kid was the Lost in Space episode with Athena.
Oh, yeah, which is gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, for some reason, I don't know why, like there's a primal thing that really scared me.
Yeah.
Plus Athena was seductive, but was going to take you away. You know, it was like she was a siren.
Yeah.
She was going to sing to you and you were going to get lulled, and then she was going to take you away.
There was a movie based on the book, Jacob Tutu and the Hooded Fang. You know what that is?
No.
This is too Canadian a reference. I think this is a Mordecai Richler children's book, I think. And they made a movie out of that, and they showed it to our second grade class, and everybody in class was horrified and terrified. It was just one of those absolutely...
Jacob Tutu and the Hooded Fang.
Yeah, Jacob Tutu and the Hooded Fang. I mean, it's got the phrase Hooded Fang in the title.
Hooded Fang is great, yeah.
But yeah.
Not to be confused with the Nervous Norvus song, The Fang.
No, not at all. Those were all things I didn't have access to. I'd hear about Dr. Demento. Never got to hear Dr. Demento. I'd hear about these things, but never had access to them, you know? Yeah.
That's so funny. Hearing you talk about it and then comparing it to I grew up in the boonies in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. Like, I grew up 50 minutes outside of Boston, which...
How is that the boonies if you're 15 minutes away from Boston?
50. But when you're...
50, yeah.
But... In Massachusetts, before the internet,
right? Yeah,
like before cable,
yeah,
it was the middle of nowhere, and still, like I was just there, like it's Trump country. It's,
when I was growing up,
it's trucks and gun racks and camouflage hoodies, and it's upstate New York. It's Massachusetts.
When I was growing up, whenever there was a thunder and lightning storm, we would get a second television channel.
Just because of that weird
reception thing.
Again, the ionosphere.
Yeah.
Fucking ionosphere.
You'd see Wheel of Fortune. This is my dad would be like trying to adjust things for us.
Wasn't that the whole premise of SCTV? It was just it's the
UHF station that's just sort of fading in and out.
What was was there a town that it was based in? It was.
I don't think they ever named the town. Did they? No.
I'm thinking it was like a guy's name. It was like. Not Craigville, but something like that.
Oh, right. The great thing about SCTV was, for a Canadian, it was full of Canadian references.
Right.
And I like that, unapologetically. They knew Americans were going to see it. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
And to this day...
Again, it was that, like, we don't care if you get this.
Exactly. Yeah. They did a hilarious parody of something called Hinterland's Who's Who. And in Canada, there used to be this thing that aired during commercial breaks, and they have this evocative music, like a pan flute with just a few notes, and a thing would come on the screen, Hinterland's Who's Who, Government of Canada, and it would tell you a little fact about the hedgehog or the groundhog for 30 seconds, and then that would be it.
That's a great idea.
And so SCTV parodied that, and there's an episode, actually it's a parody within the parody. They parodied the movie Going Down the Road, which at that point was the most famous Canadian movie. Still to this day, one of the most bleak, depressing, sad movies ever made. Most Canadian movies are very sad. And it's about these two guys who lose their jobs in Nova Scotia, and they're going to move to Toronto to get a job. Lots of jobs in Toronto, Jimmy. Let's go to Toronto. Lots of girls, too. And they go to Toronto, and they can't find a job, and then they end up stealing to make a living, to feed the women they've knocked up, and then they end up dying, slipping on ice, and cracking their skulls.
Oh, my God. It's horrifying.
Anyways, SCTV did a great parody of it, starring Joe Flaherty and John Candy. Lots of jobs in Toronto, doing this exaggerated accent. And on their drive to Toronto, they accidentally... The camera pans back, and you see Eugene Levy in a CBC jacket going, "Oh, my God, you've killed..." They're filming Hinterland's Who's Who.
The Great White North sketch was like a mandatory, like you need Canadian content per episode.
That's right. That's how that happened, yeah. I mean, still to this day, these guys are... There's a thing in Canada called the Order of Canada, which is like getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but in Canada. And they only really give it to people that are on TV and have succeeded in the States. That's how
that's funny.
How you get an Order of Canada. So Martin Short has one.
Yeah. Ken Dryden has one.
Oh, it probably does. Why do you know Ken Dryden?
Because I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, so Boston versus Montreal.
Yeah,
of course. But all those things. So, but there was a period there in Canada where SCTV was done and Kids in the Hall hadn't started yet, and that was the period when I was growing up.
Oh God,
CBC.
yeah, you're just murdered.
There was no comedy. There were Wayne and Schuster package shows of their old sketches that they would rerun. Do you know Wayne and Schuster?
Yeah, it was very Cal Burnett, kind of very straight
Carol
down
Burnett.
the middle.
Yes. And I only learned this recently because we may or may not be doing it, but there's talk of doing a history of Canadian comedy series in Canada that they're talking to me about at the CBC. So I don't know if it'll happen. But in preparation for that, I've done a little bit more research on Wayne and Schuster. I thought I knew everything about them that there was to know. But I just learned something recently that I didn't know. They were despised in Canada. It's all been taught to me that they were like Canadian heroes.
Yeah, as I would assume.
Because they were on television from the 50s right through the 90s.
Yeah.
Constantly. They were the only comedians on CBC, on Canadian television for years and years and years. But I went back and looked at the reviews in the 50s and 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s. They're maligned by every critic saying, ugh, more Wayne and Schuster, more tired old school comedy that was out of fashion in 1960 is still on TV in the 1970s. In the era of Saturday Night Live and Steve Martin, the CBC is still subjecting Canadians to this garbage. Like over and over and over.
That's amazing.
Yeah, which I never knew. So I was kind of fascinated by that. And
that is amazing.
And Johnny Wayne, who was considered sort of the funny one of the group, I found all these other news articles about they would do personal appearances all around Canada, be grand marshals at parades or whatever. Apparently, he would abuse people everywhere he went. So he was leaving a scorched earth everywhere he went. He this Canadian hero where he'd chew people out and throw things and scream things. And I never knew any of this growing up.
Really?
Yeah, because in Canada, they got their own postage stamp. They're treated as these icons. But really, if we're being subjective or objective as Canadians, we just watched it because it was the only thing that was on.
Sure, yeah,
not because it was like must-see TV.
Yeah, no, it's the only thing you have.
And so when SCTV came along, and later when Kids in the Hall came along, for Canadians, it was the same experience you had when Saturday Night Live came along, and when Steve Martin came along. It was like, this is a whole new game.
Yeah, it's a whole new thing. Yeah,
and everything I've been told is a lie.
Yeah,
I thought this was funny. It turns out it wasn't. In comparison, this is the real thing.
Like I remember seeing, and I think I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail before I ever saw an episode of the show. Mm-hmm. No, that can't be true because it came out in '75 and I was already watching the show.
I saw Wayne's World before I ever saw Saturday Night Live.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. But I remember seeing specifically. I remember seeing like I just thought. I remember seeing Python early, like 9 or 10, and then Holy Grail came around at the same time. Mm-hmm. The sword fight in Holy Grail. Mm-hmm. My friend Alan Anderson, who lived across the street from me growing up, who I'm still friends with. I've known him since I have memory. Like, wow. I've known him since he literally lived across the street from me, and we started hanging out when I was like 4 years old. Like I've known him that long.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I saw him 2 weeks ago. I remember Alan describing the sword fight from Holy Grail, and I was like, "Yeah, there's no way that can be. There's no way that can be real." And then seeing it on PBS on Channel 2 in Boston. And it was I just couldn't believe, like my mind exploded. Like I couldn't believe how funny it was. But I knew for whatever reason, I knew it was funny. I had a sophisticated, I knew there was something about it that I liked. Mm-hmm. I knew there was something about it that was not the Carol Burnett show. Like, I had a good comedy education.
The Kids in the Hall in Canada were so revelatory.
Mm-hmm.
Here the Kids in the Hall always had a cult following.
Yeah.
But in Canada, they had a mainstream following.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
So the next day in high school, everybody was talking about the previous night's episode of the Kids in the Hall. I'm talking about jocks, rednecks, people that normally wouldn't enjoy men in drag.
It was on CBC, right?
It was on CBC.
Like prime time?
Unfortunately, their scheduling got shifted around throughout their entire duration. I remember this vividly because I had to be in bed on school nights at like 9:30 p.m. and they kept changing the time slot on Kids in the Hall around from 9 to 10. And so I'd always be like negotiating with my mother. Can I stay up an extra? No, you're correct. I go, yeah, but they changed it from Tuesday nights at 9 to Thursday nights at 10. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So
I have to see it.
Yeah. but everybody would be talking about it at school. People that were
shadowy men from a shadowy planet selling out stadiums.
Not stadiums, but they could tour. And unfortunately, that guy tragically died near the end there. But shadowy men were like a big deal in Canada, especially in Toronto. And the Kids in the Hall still, to this day, the Kids in the Hall can sell out a stadium in Canada whenever they do a tour. I mean, they're gods there, and deservedly so. They changed our lives for the better, and pretty much anybody my age who has any involvement in comedy, it can all be traced back to the Kids in the Hall, whether it's my friend Levi McDougall, who's at Conan O'Brien now, or Thomas Middleditch, who's on Silicon Valley, or myself. We'll all tell you, Kids in the Hall, Kids in the Hall, Kids in the Hall, because that was our one pipeline to like quality, original, unique comedy.
Right.
You weren't.
It spoke to you.
It spoke to you, and it was that like involuntary laughter.
Yeah, you'd really laugh. Yeah, you'd really laugh. It was and it was surprising. You know, like it's so funny. The 70s, the late 70s in comedy, and you wrote a book about it, so I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but like there was a lot of stuff going on at the same time. Like you still had Bob Hope still had specials on in the late 70s. You know, the old school, the old generation were still around. Buddy Hackett was still on the Tonight Show. You know, they were still around. They were still making a living. Yeah. But then you would see, and then there were a lot of really great mainstream comedians. There was like George Carlin, who was very revolutionary for the early 70s, but by the late 70s, everybody had taken George Carlin and Robert Klein,
diluted it,
and then you had David Brenner, Bobby Kelton, like all these guys.
Yeah. Who could forget Bobby Kelton?
Billy Crystal, but like all these guys, very funny and nice guys. I know I'm in a weird position where I know most of them now. They're all really nice guys. But then you'd see Steve Martin, who was just like took what they did and like I imagine like traditional comedy was like a bundle of long fluorescent light bulbs, and he just smashed it over his knee. Said, "No, I'm not doing that," and it was transfixing to watch.
The 70s were interesting because that generation of comedians were the first generation to grow up with television. So much of comedy in the 70s was making fun of television.
Yeah.
So Saturday Night Live, SCTV, and then people deconstructing showbiz. So Albert Brooks, Steve Martin.
Albert Brooks was also one of those people that you would see on Saturday Night Live was most people's exposure to him originally. He had short movies in the first season of Saturday Night Live, and it was comedy about comedy, which makes perfect sense because his dad was a comedian. But you also got that sense from him that he didn't, and this is not true, but the sense that you got was, this guy doesn't give a fuck if I get this or not. Which makes you want to get it. I mean, it's just natural. It's like, I have this thing, and I mean, it's the brilliance. Here's the connection between Albert Brooks and Storage Wars. Storage Wars is you know the show.
Yeah.
Okay. It's Let's Make a Deal.
Yeah.
It's, I have a box. Are you interested in seeing what's inside this box? Yes. Albert Brooks had that same thing. But to him, the box with Albert Brooks was, I'm doing this thing. I don't give a fuck if you get it or not. Which makes you go, no, I want to get it. What is it? I want to know. What is this thing that gives you so much power? And it's just, I want to know. I want to be in on it.
Do you know who Pete Smith is? Pete Smith Specialties?
No.
MGM.
What an exotic name.
Yeah. You see these on TCM from time to time. They were two real comedy shorts that MGM made, Pete Smith Specialty. And they were a lot like the Robert Benchley shorts where you'd see a character doing something and then somebody's narrating. Oh, look at this gentleman.
Yeah.
He thinks he's going to have an easy day at work. Little does he know. So Pete Smith made these two real comedy shorts back in the 1930s and 40s, and he was friends with Albert Brooks' father, Parkiakarkas, Harry Einstein. And Harry Einstein had written some of these two real comedy shorts for Pete Smith back in the 40s. When Albert Brooks finished making Real Life, his first movie, I guess it's 1979 or something, and he was really excited, and he's walking down Beverly Hills. The movie is done. It's about to come out. And Pete Smith is driving by, like in his Rolls Royce convertible, and hey, Albert, because he knows him as
his dad.
He knows his dad, and he goes, Pete Smith, guess what? I just finished my first motion picture. And Pete Smith goes, congratulations. How many reels?
That's fantastic.
Albert told me that story. It just
How many reels?
How many reels?
That's amazing. I remember, apropos of nothing, I remember the first thing that I wrote and produced that got on television, which was called The Big Scary Movie Show, which was the series of me hosting horror movies, which is the only job I'm qualified to do, and interviewing people. It aired, the first episode aired, and it's Bela Lugosi's Dracula, and I'm hosting it, and I'm interviewing Mila Nurmi, talking about Bela Lugosi, and that's how Mila and I became friends. Mm-hmm. And there's interstitial stuff. It was a really fun show. I wish it had become something. But I'm watching it, and the first commercial, and I'm like, I wrote this. This is my thing. I thought of it, and I wrote it. Now it's on television. And the first commercial comes on. It's a guy in a suit, and he's just walking through a field, and he just looks in the camera and he goes, would you like to learn to draw? Had it up to here with store-bought Q-tips. Oh man, so depressing. But so when did you get out? Did you go to college in Canada? Because now it's you go home to Nelson in a week or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Your life doesn't change. You get online, you turn on the television, it's all the same.
Yeah, now it's easy. Now, I got a book deal with Simon & Schuster for my next book, and I can write it from anywhere, so it's not a big deal to go to rural Canada, enjoy nature for a while, and I work the same way I would work in Hollywood and come here when I want.
Is it good to get out?
Yeah, well, it's good to have variance of any kind to your life.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I love Southern California. I love it.
I do too. I love living in LA.
I love Hollywood. I love Death Valley, which I mentioned. I love the national parks. I love San Francisco. I love all of California. And
California is my favorite country.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing place. So I have not left California. I'm sort of like going back and forth, But I love rural British Columbia in a way I do. I love it in a way that I didn't love it when I lived there, because wherever you grew up, you want to get the fuck out of there. So I didn't even realize that it was a beautiful place. The mountains meant nothing to me back then because I was so bored of them.
I totally get that.
So I'd rather a barren desert, which they don't have in Canada. Yeah. But now I really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
I love Ojai, California.
Oh.
Because it's my hometown the way I would want it to be. It's about the size of my hometown,
right? Except
everything else is different.
Everybody else is doing ayahuasca.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's up in the mountains. It's in California, but it's a small town. You can walk around it.
You know who lives there? We were talking about Mad Magazine. That's where
Sergio Aragonés lives.
Yeah. I'm
proud to say that that my ex-wife owns a house there.
Okay. The only time I've ever been starstruck in Hollywood, I'm really good with not being starstruck, even around my heroes. I did a show at a theater here with George Schlatter where we went into his vault and we showed a bunch of rare footage, like the all-black version of Laugh-In, which only aired once. And we did this great show together, and afterwards, we're meeting people out back, and George had invited somebody to come to the show, and I was starstruck, and it was Sergio.
Oh, really? Yeah.
With the big mustache.
Yep.
And I was just in awe because I remember reading Mad Magazine before I knew how to read.
Sure.
So I would skip all the parodies because there's full of words.
Yeah.
But I would read Sergio stuff and laugh and laugh and laugh. And
a lot of that starstruck is also the condition. Like, you didn't see him like at a you bumped into him.
Yeah. And he was at my show.
Yeah.
Complimenting me. And here I am like, you're my fucking hero since the age of 3 years old.
I had two weird, a couple, obviously, living out here for 5,000 years, but I'm living in San Francisco. I'm driving from the East Bay back to San Francisco. So this is the mid, like 86 or 87. I'm driving over the Bay Bridge late at night, like 2 a.m. or something, like coming back from a gig. And it's 2 cars on the bridge, me and my 1980 Honda Civic hatchback. and a fucking cherry 57 Chevy. And I think, who the fuck's driving this car?
Mm-hmm.
And I go up next to it, and you know the certain iconic profiles? It was Neil Young.
Wow.
Yeah. And I looked at it and he just kind of looked. I was like, yeah, it's Neil Young. All right, that's fine. Because he lives up there. And yeah, he would have a 57 Chevy.
Are you familiar? You must be.
And the same thing happened to me on Fairfax and 3rd,
mm-hmm.
right in front of the Writers Guild building,
mm-hmm.
like a 57 Chevy. I look over. Oh, Joe Strummer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You, since you've lived here for 100 years, you must be familiar with the Hollywood Center Motel on Sunset Boulevard near Hollywood High, near Sunset and La Brea. There's that old roadside motel that looks like a serial killer has killed some people there. And
I'm sure that.
literally that somebody has.
Yeah.
That is where the Buffalo Springfield formed, lived, and rehearsed.
I did not know that.
Because people always...
and how far was that from the old Tropicana, which is where Waits used to live?
Yeah. Well, Tropicana was closer to West Hollywood. It was in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is more like Hollywood Central.
Right.
But yeah, Neil Young, Buffalo Springfield's one of my favorite bands of all time. They were only together for a year.
Yeah. What I love about Buffalo Springfield is, and it's the 60s before it started to color outside of the lines.
Yeah.
You know, it was like my favorite Beatles album is Revolver.
Yeah.
Like it's just, they're still kind of,
we're still composing harmonies.
Yeah. And we're still like have structure and, you know, and it was before everything went crazy bananas, which has its own value. It's just not my specific taste.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still kind of like still playing by the rules a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when you mention Neil Young, when anybody mentions Neil Young, I think of Buffalo Springfield. I love
Mr. Daryl Hannah, by the way. Speaking of Roxanne.
Neil Young's married to Daryl Hannah?
They just got married like 2 months ago, and apparently they've been together for a long time.
I had no idea. I don't pay attention to the gossip.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I was just like, Neil Young married Daryl Hannah. I was like, that tracks.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Yeah.
JFK Jr. to Neil Young. That's an interesting trajectory.
Yes. Well, it's like Jane Fonda. All of her husbands are like these Roger Vadim. What's his name? Tom Hayden.
Tom Hayden. Yeah.
Ted Turner. Like, these are like really...
Well, Tom Hayden and Ted Turner, that doesn't track at all.
Exactly, but just bizarre.
Well, they're also like different aspects of her dad shown in that come up in different people.
Oh, Mr. Armchair Psychology over there.
I don't even think that qualifies as psychology anymore. I think that's a layup. I think that's a pretty standard issue. So when did you suddenly find yourself immersed in all of this stuff?
When I got, I was starting to immerse myself when we got cable. I started watching movies like crazy. That's when I got into movies. When I was 14, I would go into the TV guide, and if it said 3 stars, you know, they used to give star ratings in the TV guide.
Yeah.
I would go, I'd highlight, 3-star movie, 3.5-star movie, 4-star, without knowing what they were. I was going to watch them. And
with 6, you get egg roll.
Exactly. 4 stars.
Yeah. Under the yum yum tree.
You know, in Studio City, on the sidewalk in Studio City, there's a star 4 with 6. You get egg roll.
I believe it. Where is the star for the effective what is it's the worst title?
Marigolds.
The effect of gamma rays on Man in the Moon Marigold.
Yes, yeah.
It's the worst title.
Worst title. Great fucking movie. That's
an
amazing movie. One of those early 70s bleak, downbeat, downtrodden tragedy at the end, no happy ending.
What is like for people that really like want to know what like 70s cinema was like? 5 Easy Pieces is a great one to watch.
Well, all of those.
What is it about? It's about a guy having a slow nervous breakdown.
Have you ever seen Busting? Elliot Gould, Robert Blake, Antonio Fargas.
No. I saw Bustin' Loose.
No, not Bustin' Loose. Busting.
By the way, Bustin' Loose is a great movie.
It is a great movie. It might even be Richard Pryor's best movie.
Yeah.
It's right.
And I hope you get sickle cell.
Yeah. It's a great movie. Did Carl Gottlieb write that?
Could have.
I think he may have co-wrote it. Or maybe I'm getting it...
confused with Jaws?
Yes, I am. You're right. It's the Richard Pryor movie with the shark. I'm sorry.
Did George Slaughter do the all black Jaws?
You should have.
By the way, I could pitch that and get money today.
Have you seen Norman, Is That You, the movie?
No.
It's the only movie George Schlatter ever directed. Norman, Is That You was a white
Great title.
Was a white play about a gay son who's hiding the fact that he's gay from his parents. They come to visit him and they find out he has this gay roommate. Blah blah blah. It's like basically the premise of Three's Company, but
sure, yeah.
They made it,
or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Yeah, they made an all-black version starring Red Fox and Pearl Bailey, co-starring Waylon Flowers and Madam.
Just to tip it a little bit.
Directed by George Schlatter, shot on video and then transferred to film, which is never a good look.
What? Why?
Because George thought it would be an exciting new technology.
Oh no!
But
who played Norman?
Oh God, I forget his name. It was not like a well-known person, but there was a whole genre of these movies that were supposed to be progressive in terms of like gay culture that were like the opposite.
Oh yeah.
The Ritz is one of them.
Three's Company in and of itself is like talking about stuff you couldn't do today,
right?
Like what's the premise of the show? Oh, this guy thinks this guy's gay. I know, but what's the premise of the show? No, we did. That's the premise of the show. What? Yeah, that's the premise. This one guy thinks another guy's gay.
We don't want
That's not a premise.
But with Don Knotts, sold.
Yeah, son. Oh, in that case.
Yeah.
But the ghost of Mr. Chicken Hawk. Thank you.
God, I love Don Knotts. Is there anybody funnier? No. When it comes to people that are just naturally funny, standing still, doing nothing, doesn't matter how bad the script is, he can make anything worth watching.
I did Plan 9 from Outer Space live at Largo.
Yeah.
And I play, and we've done it, I don't know how many times we've done it, but I play two roles. I do Criswell, and then I do General Edwards, who's in one scene, and he's the general he's the guy, I forget the name, I see him, the name of the actor, he's done Perry Mason all the time. It's just a long, sweaty dialogue scene that really doesn't need to be in the movie.
Right.
But I thought normally I do him like Charlton Heston just to give the scene a little bit of something because it's pretty flat. And I just thought, well, I'll just do it as Don Knotts this time. Just mix it up. And people just, even the impression of Don was a good impression. Yeah. People, it just like lifts off the ground.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with it. It's not me. It's just me channeling Don Knotts.
It's true. I did it once.
Come on, Colonel, come over here. Just like something about his personality that's like, oh my God, how do you...
When my 14th...
Like Bill Murray, just like effortlessly funny. Like I just want to watch you walk down the street. It's going to be funny.
Certain people. Zach Galifianakis is like that too when he's, just his face is funny. The lack of response, a deadpan, and it's funny.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my 14th stand-up gig ever. It was the first time I ever got paid to do stand-up.
Oh, okay.
$20, so I remember it. It was at a banquet, all-black crowd. I was the entertainment.
Oh, my God.
I had no material because I'd only done stand-up 14 times. So I did my two jokes that always worked. They didn't work.
No.
So then I did every joke I'd ever had that didn't work, and of course they didn't work.
Right.
So I'm bombing for 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then a desperate move, I do a Don Knotts impression. Kills. Destroyed. I wasn't an impression. It was the first and last time I ever did an impression on stage. But again, it was just that, and that was enough.
Boom.
Yeah.
No, he just had it. He is just something amazing.
To answer your question.
Yeah.
When did that was the start of the question.
Yeah. Did you come down to, where did you go to college when you left?
So when
Nelson, how did you go?
So did
you bathe in this when you get out?
I got kicked out of high school in the 11th grade. And so that was the end of my education right there.
Really? Didn't know that.
Yeah. No college, no university, no high school diploma. But I sort of did my first foray into comedy in a way I noticed later. I didn't realize.
How did you get kicked out of college? Let's go back to that.
Not college, high school.
Yeah, how did you get kicked out of high school in the 11th grade?
I
redirect.
I ran for
sidebar.
Yeah, I ran for school president, and I had read already by that point. I had read at the age of 16, 17, because when you're 16, 17, you start to get into stuff. You get into music. You start to get into things. And I got into Frank Zappa, and I got into Stan Freberg, and I had read both of their memoirs. In both of their memoirs, they talk about running for school president and doing some stupid kind of crazy shtick or campaign.
Yeah.
And Stan Freberg campaigned on a promise to remodel the girls' change room with glass walls. So that was his campaign slogan. So I campaigned for school president. I wasn't popular enough to get elected in any capacity. I was very quiet and shy and stuff. But I wrote this speech, and I wrote it when I was in the 8th grade. I kept punching it up every summer. I hid it in the mattresses of my bed. Finally, the 11th grade, I run for school president, and if you get elected, then you serve in the 12th grade. And I did this thing. My school was called Mount Sentinel. I said, God created Mount Sentinel in 7 days. On the first day, he said, and then everything that God said was something negative about the school that everybody knew to be true. So it started off innocuous. God said that let there be water fountains where the water tastes like blood, because we had these old rusty pipes. God said this, God said that.
Big laughs.
Yeah, big laughs. Then I started talking about the teachers. God said, let there be a English teacher who was sent here after being fired for sexual harassment at a different school. And the whole crowd, 400, it was a small school, I should say, 7th to 12th grade, 400 students total.
Yeah, it sounds like my high school.
But he got kicked out for sexual harassment. The whole crowd goes, ooh, like this loud ooh. I go, on the 3rd day, God said, let there be a drama teacher who used to do softcore pornography. Ooh! On the 4th day, God said, let there be a social studies teacher who gets drunk in the back room during class. Woo! And all these things were true. We lived at such a isolated area that our isolated school...
You would get all of the...
It was punishment for teachers from other school districts.
Detritus.
So I did all that, and then I got to the last line, and I said, now my opponents have promised you things. I promise you nothing, because a school president has no power. The only thing I can promise you is that if elected, I'll be the coolest fucking school president this school has ever seen. I used the F word. Yeah. Everybody stands up, starts cheering, yeah! And I walked off, and I had a kid in the gym office hit play on a cassette tape that amplified, and it was the theme from Shaft. As I walked off. And I won 400 votes to 0-0. In a landslide, I won.
Amazing.
But I was immediately summoned to the principal's office. And I'm walking down the hallway, and the principal is like, follow me. And there's the social studies teacher who I said was drunk in class, pacing back and forth. And he was an old guy. He was a war veteran. And as I walked by, he's mumbling under his breath, I didn't fight at the Battle of Iwo Jima, whatever he was mumbling something. They sit me down in the principal's office, and the principal sits down. He takes a big sigh, takes off his glasses, starts massaging his face like this. Doesn't say anything. He goes, oh, never in all my years of principaling. And then the vice principal runs in, and he's like Iago in Othello. He's whispering in the principal's ear, and I can hear him. He goes, if it was up to me, sir, he wouldn't be coming back next year. If it was up to me, sir, he wouldn't be coming. And the principal goes, he won't be. He won't be. He won't be. He goes, just sit here till we figure out what to deal with you. So they leave the room.
That's legal.
I'm sitting there by myself in the principal's office. Then every teacher that I had ridiculed in the speech had a chance to come in and address me one-on-one and confront me. So, the social studies teacher was just furious, red in the face, wanted to strangle me. Then the English teacher comes in, and he goes, tell me this. You do that to make a statement, or are you just doing it to get votes? And I go, I don't know, like both, I guess. He goes, both, yeah, both, you little shit. And he walks out. Then my drama teacher comes in, who I had said had done softcore pornography. And every teacher was addressing me almost in the stereotype you would expect that teacher to address you.
That's on you.
Yeah. So the drama teacher comes in, she goes, Kliph, that was an amazing performance.
Really?
Yeah. So I got kicked out of school, and they said, don't come back until you hear from us. And then I didn't hear from them.
I don't know if that's legal here. I think they have to offer you some form of option to get you.
My option was to go to a different school.
Was there one?
There was, in Nelson. So this school that I was at was in the woods. And so I went to that school.
What did your parents say?
My mom got a phone call at work. She had to come home early, and I was at home at like 2 p.m. She was crying. She was hysterical. She goes, Kliph, don't you ever think before you act? I go, think before I act? I wrote it in the 8th grade. I've been punching it up for 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So in a way, it was my first stand-up performance. I didn't think of it as that at the time, because again, stand-up, I didn't know from anything. But maybe a year and a half later, like I went to that other school, but I didn't finish. My heart wasn't in it. I didn't know anybody there.
Right.
It wasn't fun. I would just go to the video store, rent movies, hitchhike back to the woods, watch those movies. Eventually, I hitchhiked across the country from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean and back. I was obsessed with the Beat generation, so that was my big...
We've all had that.
Coming of age, you know. And then I moved to Toronto at the age of 18, and my plan was to write for television. I wanted to write sitcoms because I knew I could, because I would watch TV and I'd go, this is so fucking easy.
Yeah, it's not hard.
And I would watch Jay Leno's monologue or David Letterman's monologue, and I would guess all the punchlines before they got to the joke. So I understood the formula just inherently. So I was like, I could do this. So I went and I took a course in Toronto to write television sitcoms. But in order to do it, you had to study sitcoms. And it was pre-DVD, pre-internet.
And it's very hard to do.
So you got to watch the show when it airs once a week. Or I picked a show that I knew was already in syndication so I could learn the characters quickly. So I was studying Third Rock from the Sun.
Sure.
And I wrote a pitch or tone perfect, formulaic episode of Third Rock from the Sun as a spec script for my class. And if you remember the show, they're aliens from outer space. They're pretending to be civilians, human beings. I wrote this episode where John Lithgow goes out to the mailbox in the morning, takes out an envelope. It's from Publishers Clearinghouse. You have won $1 million. He thinks he's a millionaire. He runs into the house. We're rich, we're rich, we're rich. That's the teaser.
Right.
Episode starts. We're millionaires. Everybody quits their jobs and tells their bosses and coworkers.
That's a great idea, yeah.
They go on spending sprees. They max out their credit cards. Then the act break, they learn, we're not actually millionaires.
Yeah.
They have to, So that was what I wrote. But by studying these shows, I went, I don't want to fucking write this shit. Television's horrible,
Yeah, exactly.
There was nothing on TV.
You can learn how to make mush.
It was pre-cable TV renaissance, pre-Sopranos, any of that. So there was a stand-up comic in my class who said, maybe you should try stand-up because you're funny. And at that point, I had a prejudice against stand-up that it was the 1980s, shoulder pads, skinny tie, corny. And I said, I don't really want to do that. But he said, well, why don't you come down and watch
There were sketches on Saturday Night Live.
Right, Tom Hanks.
Yeah, about sweaty, terrible stand-up comics.
Sleeves rolled up. Yeah. So that was what
Here she comes.
Yeah.
And there she goes. Yeah. It's a Seinfeld, basically.
Yeah.
Didn't even break stride. Yeah.
Yeah. So I moved to Toronto, and I got to say, when I moved there, I hated it because I didn't know anybody there. I just went from the woods straight to one of the largest cities in North America. And I had like a tragic 2 years trying to figure it out.
Yeah. How'd you have a house? Did you have nights under the stars on your hitchhiking journey?
Oh, man. Well, the hitchhiking trip was amazing. Still to this day, it was a remarkable thing. But anyways, that was sort of my coming of age. And I eventually did start doing stand-up. And it's such a great feeling when you first start doing stand-up to get the verification that you're funny, because you think you're funny, you assume you're funny. You wouldn't try and do stand-up if you didn't think you're funny, but you don't really know how funny you are or where you stand until you're shoulder to shoulder with other funny people. And you go, well, I'm funnier than that guy. Well, that guy's way funnier than me.
Right.
And here's my people. Here's the level that I'm at. And of course, then the audience tells you for sure whether you're funny or not. So that was
the audience. No, we'll tell you who's funny.
Yeah. So that was sort of. And again, when I moved to Toronto, I didn't know anybody. So then I started going to the video stores and really digging deep. And there was a place called Suspect Video in Toronto, which was unfucking believable. The greatest video store.
Suspect. That was a great name.
Great name, great store, great employees. It was one of those places where they had movies that weren't on VHS, but somehow they had them on VHS.
Yeah.
You're like, why is the cover of this movie photocopied? Why is there a photocopy of Willie Dynamite?
That's amazing.
Pre-DVD era. So I would go there and I would rent like 24 videos at once and then drag them back to the suburbs of Toronto and just watch everything. And again, that also, not only do you learn how funny you are, I also learned that I knew stuff about show business when I moved to Toronto. Because when I moved there, I thought, I'm going to be out of my league because I'm from the woods. Everybody's going to be smarter, funnier, more knowledgeable. And I took this sitcom writing class. Nobody knew anything about the history of comedy, about old comedians, about old TV shows. I was the only person who knew that. I wanted to talk to people about the Goon Show. And nobody couldn't find anybody. So that was.
Did you know Viv Caldellini? Do you know?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
No, who's that?
Viviano Caldellini is a comedy director from Toronto.
Well, when I lived in Toronto, I was brand new breaking into comedy.
He was the Kids in the Hall guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The first and really only huge show I did when I was living in Toronto. It was the biggest show I'd ever done in my life up to that point. It was right after Phil Hartman was murdered. His family put on a tribute to him in their hometown of Brantford, Ontario. It was hosted by Dave Foley, and all the Canadian comedy mafia was there. Lorne Michaels was there. Dan Aykroyd was there. Sean Cullen, Dave Foley, all these people. And there was a banquet beforehand backstage, and wherever you were seated told you where you were in the hierarchy of Canadian show business.
Right.
So I was seated next to Al Waxman. Do you know who that is? Al Waxman played the desk sergeant on Cagney and Lacey.
Oh, okay.
But he's famous in Canada for being the founder of the Actors Union there, ACTRA.
Okay.
But he was sort of this vain, not very funny guy, but real smug. And if you walk up the steps to ACTRA in Toronto, at least back then when I was getting my union card there, there's an oil painting of him at the top of the staircase with like a cape draped over his shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, he's got this smug look on his face. But he started in Canada's only successful television sitcom. It was called The King of Kensington. And for decades, it was Canada's only sitcom.
Right.
It wasn't very good. One episode had a guest appearance by Hervé Villechaize.
Well, there's something.
Yeah. But anyways, I was seated with him at this thing. It was a tribute to Phil Hartman. Dave Foley hosted, and I did a sketch on that show that was written by somebody else. Through the whole show, I wanted to say something to Dave Foley because the kids in the hall meant so much to me. But I didn't say anything to him. You know, I was too nervous, too shy. I went up on stage. We did this sketch. I did something that only a stand-up comic would do, and it was unconscionable for any performer to do this as an actor. I was the straight man in the sketch, and my co-actor was the person with all the funny lines. But I devised it so that my character was funny. So all these straight lines that I delivered got laughs, and all the laughs I got, she wasn't a comedian, so she wasn't really timing for laughs, drowned out all her lines. Oh, no. So I destroyed in front of 2,000 people, and I came off stage, and Dan Aykroyd rushed up to me. He goes, "That was great. You were so funny." And then he looked at this woman, Jillian, and he goes, "Honey, I couldn't hear a word you were saying." And she shot me this look like I deserved to be murdered. And I did deserve to be murdered. It was the worst thing a person could do. But it was that stand-up comic. I know. He capitalized on it. And then Dave Foley came up after the show and said, "Hey, man, that was really funny." And I was like jelly with that comment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But that was sort of where I got my start, was in Toronto when I started to learn.
That must have been so weird to be, to grow up so isolated from it and just like looking through a pinhole at it. I mean, you're really just looking at it through a pinhole, and then you're immersed in it.
And also you know where you stand. It was such a great feeling, you know, to know that, I can swim with the big guns to some degree, or eventually I will. Yeah, it was just, and also when I moved into Toronto to take that sitcom writing class, right near where I was going to school, taking this course, there was a giant record store going out of business called Frank's Vinyl Museum. And Frank's Vinyl Museum had thousands and thousands and thousands of LPs. And it had been open since the 50s. And unlike other record stores, if they didn't sell something, record stores send the dead stock back.
Right.
This place didn't. They kept all their dead stock in the basement. So when they went out of business, records from the 50s, 60s, and 70s were sealed, were being sold for $1 a piece.
Oh, my God.
And so they had a comedy section. Red Fox, LaWanda Page, Moms Mabley, and all these obscure comedians. And I was buying all of them, 50 cents $1. And that gave me my education on these old comedians.
Right.
That's where I learned who Woody Woodbury was. That's where I learned who Rusty Warren was.
Woodbury. Knockers up.
Yeah. And on the back of them, they'd say, "Filmed live from the stage in Miami Beach." Live from Miami Beach. I go, "What's going on in Miami Beach?" And I slowly but surely learned about comedy that way.
Yeah.
So all this kind of happened at
these clubs like recorded live at the Rooster Tail in Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, that's right.
Takeoffs and put-ons.
That's right. That's right. George Carlin did that. The Temptations did a record there. Jack Carter has a story about having to flee the Detroit riots when he was booked at the Rooster Tail. And he had like chaperones of the National Guard getting him out of town.
Yeah, because who's whiter?
Yeah. Frankly, yeah.
This is out in paperback.
My book, The Comedians, is out in paperback.
But you're writing a new book now.
I'm writing about native peoples in comedy. You know, for
Elizabeth Warren.
Well, that, I've learned, and Elizabeth Warren came out with that. I was like, oh, that's not good.
No.
That's not good. That's not good, because it seems good to the white liberal, but Native people were livid about that.
Yeah,
because you have two white people arguing over identity that has nothing to do with either.
Here's the thing about our lovely president. It's a great quote that when you wrestle with a pig, you both get filthy, and the pig loves it. It's a history of.
So my book is The Story of Native Peoples in Comedy. Going back to the days of vaudeville, the most famous and successful Native American comedian of all time is also one of the most famous and successful comedians of all time. A lot of people don't realize that he was Native, and that's Will Rogers.
I didn't know that myself.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. One of the reasons, even then, people didn't realize that is because he wore a cowboy hat. And for most non-natives, a Native person has to wear a feathered headdress in order to be a Native American, which of course is preposterous. But so he was born in what then was called Indian Territory. It was the original reservation in the United States. Eventually it became Oklahoma in 1907. But when they were forcibly removing Native people from places like Georgia, North Carolina, West Virginia, they shoved them into Indian territory.
Right.
You live here now.
Yeah.
And so that's where Will Rogers was born. That's where he grew up. And in the Cherokee Nation, not that long after the Trail of Tears. So he was sort of versed in that. And he was, as you know, did rope tricks.
Amazing he wasn't full of anger.
It is amazing. And it is amazing that he...
talk about, because didn't he say, I never met a man I didn't like?
Isn't it weird that Will Rogers, a famous comedian, his most famous quote, people quote it all the time. They say, "Oh, what a great American humorist. He said,
I never met a man.
Yeah, well, where's the rest of it? Where's the joke? It's just a sentence. Why is that famous? Well, I looked into that, though. Why is that sentence famous, and where does that come from? It turns out it was part of a much longer joke, and that is the maudlin ending to it. It's almost like you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you. Good night. He, in 1926, in his column, he started writing mock epitaphs, joke epitaphs. When I die, funny. I want my tombstone to say this, and it would be a joke, or this, or this, or this. It was a list of jokes.
Right.
And then the last one was sentiment, where he said, actually, I've traveled the world, and I would like it to say, I never met a man I didn't like, you know.
Yeah.
However,
and I met Hitler, and I liked him.
No, you don't realize how accurate you are.
Perfect.
Not Hitler. Will Rogers' most favorite person was Benito Mussolini.
Of course.
He wrote a series of columns praising Mussolini. He went and visited Mussolini and came back saying, we need a man like Mussolini here. And he did not say this when Mussolini was brand new. He was already controversial. Mussolini had already shut down opposition newspapers, arrested trade unionists, had his thugs go and beat people up, was about to ban Mickey Mouse from Italy and Popeye comic strips. And Will Rogers was endorsing him and promoting him without comedy in his column. And he got chewed out by people like James Thurber and other and Fred Allen, other modern day humorists at that time, saying, what the fuck is wrong with you? But till his dying day, Will Rogers defended Mussolini.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah. But anyways, the new book starts there. It goes up till today because just like everywhere, there's a comedy boom happening in Native circles right now. There's Native comedians who perform for Native audiences doing reservation comedy.
Right.
In New Mexico, there's there's a group of young comedians, many who do their setups in English and their punchlines in Navajo, and they kill. There's a brilliant sketch troupe out there, some people might know who are listening, called the 1491s, who are really, really funny. They did an appearance on The Daily Show before Jon Stewart retired a few years back, and they do great sketches.
Oh, wow. Great title. Great name.
Yeah. And so all of these I'm kind of writing about to create a greater whole. And why are there not more Native comedians?
Right.
You know, there's the whole cliche, comedy comes from suffering, comedy comes from pain, blah, 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 blah. Well, wouldn't that mean there would be more Native comedians? So I'm sort of exploring all of that and sort of the reasons and the conditions and sort of learning a lot as I go. You know, I'm learning from these comedians because I don't know shit. I'm a white guy, you know?
Right, sure, yeah.
So as much as possible, I'm having Native people tell these stories themselves in the book. And so Charlie Hill is in there. Did you ever work with him?
Yeah, I know him. I knew who he was.
Yeah, a comedy store guy.
Yep.
There was
nice guy. Everybody liked him.
And there was a comedy team who now are controversial, ironically, because they spent their whole career being uncontroversial. Now they are controversial because they've stuck around too long. the longest running comedy team in show business. They formed in 1968. They're still touring. They're called Williams and Rhee. This guy, Terry Rhee and Bruce Williams. And Terry Rhee is Lakota. And their whole shtick is about the Indian and the white guy. Like that's what they call themselves. Well, they play the sticks. They play county fairs.
Right.
But they've been doing that since 1968. And they were at the Comedy Store from 77 through 1980. And that's when they did all their television.
Right.
They did like Norm Crosby's Comedy Shop, the Dinah Shore talk show and stuff like that. So they're in the book.
Are there any people that are really like famous that we don't know are Native American? Like aside, like current Will Rogers sort of.
Will Rogers is the biggest.
Like was Claude, I mean, he's not a comedian, but was Claude Akins Native American?
He looked Native American. Yeah. He wasn't. He was Ukrainian.
Okay.
But he certainly had that look, you know. And
there's somebody else that I'm thinking of. It's yeah, he had very Lauren Green.
Lauren Green, yeah. I don't know that he was. That hasn't come up. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, those guys
he might be Canadian.
He is Canadian. Yeah. Those guys have the features that make you think they're Native. And then there's other people who claim to be Native, and like this Elizabeth Warren thing drudges up a lot of stigma bullshit because white people for generations have claimed that they're Native when they're not.
Yeah,
and it's a weird thing. Jonathan Winters, there's a strange phenomenon. There's right wingers who will claim to be Native in order to justify their own racism. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm 1/16th, blah blah blah, and that mascot doesn't offend me. You know. You also have the opposite. You'll have people who are extremely sympathetic with Native issues, so sympathetic that they themselves start to claim that they're Native.
Right.
Jonathan Winters did that. He got involved in Native issues and helping Native protests, and he went and visited the occupation of Alcatraz in the early 1970s during the AIM movement. It was always just Jonathan Winters, a white guy from Ohio. Suddenly in 1976, after years, about 10 years of being an activist on behalf of Native causes, suddenly he starts telling people that he's Native American. Out of nowhere. And I looked into this in my book because Dan Pasternak told me, he goes, I think Jonathan was Native. Like, look into it. I did look into it. And suddenly out of nowhere in 1976, he starts making this claim.
That's fascinating.
And there's a psychology to it. It was like him trying to identify deeply that he started to claim that. But when I asked his family about it, they said, yeah, we don't have any knowledge or proof of that. So that's very common. So all these sort of things to me are very interesting. And it makes it difficult researching the history. Who is actually indigenous and who is just saying that, especially in the days of vaudeville, when it was so common for people to play other races, white people playing black characters,
which is totally acceptable now.
Yeah, Goyim doing Hebrew characters.
Yeah.
There were comedians in blackface doing Hebrew accents in vaudeville. Like it was all kinds of bizarre cross-pollinization. And so there's a lot of white performers who'd put on a headdress and perform as chief, blah, 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 you know. And so it's hard for me to determine, okay, is this...
What's also interesting is comedians are outcasts, and these are outcasts among the outcasts.
Yeah.
These are the outcasts. Does the book have a working title, or...
We had a bit of a real estate problem, which is a Charlie Hill joke where he said, I'm Oneida. My people are from Wisconsin. We used to be from New York, but had a bit of a real estate problem.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's the title.
Is he still around?
No, he died in 2013, which is a shame because I never got to interview him.
Yeah.
But in researching him deeper and deeper, he's so fucking interesting.
Yeah.
Because he came of age during the AIM movement, the Russell Means, Dennis Banks era American Indian movement, AIM, which was very militant, Wounded Knee, was in the news all the time at that point. And that was the era that he was coming up in as a young Native man.
I remember seeing him on The Tonight Show, and he was friends of mine.
Yeah, no, he did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson once. He may have done it twice. Once with Carson, once with a guest host, and then once with Jay Leno. And he did Late Night with David Letterman, Late Show with David Letterman. And I think maybe, I haven't got verification, but I believe David Letterman paid for all his medical expenses at the end of his life.
Probably. I'm sure they were all Comedy Store buddies.
They were. He's not still around, but he grew up in that era of that 60s protest awakening. Right. So his first foray into performing was experimental theater in Greenwich Village. There was something called the Native American Theater Ensemble, which was all Native cast, the first all Native theater ensemble, extremely political, extremely weird.
Right.
Extremely political, like people screaming and shrieking.
Right.
And there's one play that he was in called Coyote something. Now I'm forgetting the name of the title of the play, but halfway through the play, there's a sequence where Charlie Hill, he's not famous yet, he's handed this scepter, and when you're handed this scepter, you cannot control your flatulence. And this is experimental theater from the early 70s, and so there's a scene in the play where Charlie Hill is screaming, "Why can't I stop farting? Why can't I stop farting?" And this is not supposed to be a comedy. It's supposed to be like, heady, cerebral experimental theater from 1972. Amazing. So I'm discovering a lot of interesting things in the research process.
Hurry up and write it so I can read it.
All right, brother.
And when you come back, we never got to what I wanted to talk about.
What was that?
Which was, that's my favorite thing about certain people. It's always this way, and you're one of them. I wanted to talk about what we started to talk about before we started recording was the death of old showbiz and the birth of new showbiz that took place in Hollywood in the late 60s, early 70s, as personified by El Coyote Restaurant. El Coyote. Not to be confused with CAOITI, which is a restaurant that used to be on Laurel Canyon and is now on Tahunga. Coyote.
Oh, I've never been there.
Yeah. It's just a hipster Italian kind of fusion restaurant, still around.
Mm-hmm.
But it used to be the restaurant below the Laurel Canyon country store.
Yeah, I love that store.
Yeah. And now that restaurant is Pache.
Yeah, the place is fancy.
Not too. I mean, it's the same inside. Nothing has changed inside. Different name.
Last time I walked by there,
Coyote was where Sharon Tate had her last dinner.
Last time I walked past that Laurel Canyon country store, Sally Kellerman was eating at that restaurant. So
you'll see me there around 8 o'clock every morning.
Really?
Or no, 7:15.
I love that store. I just love the history, the lore, the rock and roll history.
I love it. I drop my daughter off at the bus stop.
Yeah.
I see her get on the bus. I stop up with Laurel Canyon on my way home. I go to Laurel Canyon Country Store. I get 2 coffees. I talk to Lily, who runs the coffee shop. I go inside.
Your neighborhood is so cool for that reason.
Yes.
But you told me last time that I was up here that you'd never been to Franklin Canyon, which is right.
No, I haven't.
Which is right down the street from your house here.
Yeah, I know.
You literally live like 5 minutes away from the Andy Griffith fishing hole, and you've never been there.
I've never been there.
Good Lord, man.
I know. So, and I've never been to the weird military base where they made.
Oh, right.
They made crazy movies that now supposedly.
It was like a CIA thing, right?
Yeah, but now that weirdo actor lives there, who played the Joker in Suicide Club. Jared Leto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course he does.
Welcome to Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston, a working man's look at the socio-political issues of our day. And now, Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston.
This is Political Talk with 2 guys from Boston. I'm Johnny Condon.
And I'm Robbie Sullivan.
Raining like a bastard.
Oh, my gosh.
At what point does a puddle become a lake?
You know what's funny about the rain? I think I want it to rain. And then it's pouring. I'm going, what am I doing out in this?
Oh, yeah. You know what? You know how I'm like that?
Yeah.
I go, I'd like to go back in time. And then I go to Logan and think, oh, God, it was awful back in time. That airport is a state-of-the-art airport from 1947.
Yeah, I went to get on the train to go to Logan recently thinking, you know what I'll do is I'll save time and money. And instead of getting on an Uber or a Lyft or whatever, because they're going to sit in traffic, I'll get on the train.
Just go.
And I bought one of them cards for the T, which is, I
hear you.
Back
Fast
in the day,
pass.
the last time I was doing that all the time, you would just show the guy your fast pass, right?
Yeah.
Now you got to put it into a machine. You got to put the thing into a slot and pull it out. Well, I didn't know this, so I just flashed it at the guy. He goes, hey, you got to put it in the machine. And I got to admit, I went a little too far. I was like, I just started like going like, what's your problem? You know, I don't know what came out.
You got angry at a guy.
And now I'm sitting on the train all the way to Park Street. I'm going to get off there before I go to the airport and get some stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I got to make amends to this man.
Oh, Jesus. So you
I got to make things better.
You took a guilt trip on the T.
I don't want to walk around in a rainy.
You don't want that on you.
I don't want it on me. That's what it is. And I said to myself,
did you go back?
So what I did was I thought, if I say I'm sorry right away, he's probably going to throw me off the train as I approach. I'll wait till we get to Park Street.
No, was he an employee of the T?
He's the one, the driver.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you're in the front car.
So I'm in the front car.
Right.
And he goes,
now you're painting a whole different picture now.
Yeah.
Now it's like the third man.
What am I going to do? So I just said, you know what? And I walked up, and he sees me coming in that mirror. And I can see the vein bulging in his neck. He's not happy.
And he's just thinking confrontation, more confrontation.
Here comes this guy's going to punch me in the back of the head. But I just went up and I said, hey, buddy, do you mind? Can I talk to you for a second? He goes, what? And I've already said some things that weren't nice about like something. I don't know. It came out bad. It wasn't good.
you really unloaded.
I didn't swear or nothing, but it wasn't good. I said something demoting. And so I said, can I talk to you for a second? And he goes, what? And I go, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have talked to you that way. I was frustrated. I'm soaking wet. I apologize. I just want to make amends. And an apology isn't really, you can't say I'm sorry. That doesn't do it. You got to say, what did I do and how can I make it better? And I can say, I know you guys work hard and I apologize. I kept trying not to apologize. I must have said it 5 times. But I saw the vein in his neck dissipate.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And the anger left him.
Oh, that's amazing.
The way that, like, if someone doesn't drink, they don't smell like gin anymore.
Sure.
It just left him. It just went away.
The vein is like a horn. It would be great if, like, when you're angry, you just had a horn come out of your forehead.
Turning into bad black wings.
Yeah, and then it could just turn, then your horn goes away.
He told me a nice story. And I was gone now, and I don't have to think about this.
Good for you.
Trip. Yeah, it was really, and I thought to myself, you know what I got to do is, when I get that that feeling in the pit of my stomach that I'm about to do something wrong, I got to not do it.
Oh, that's an interesting way to approach it. It's new. It's new for you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, I'm good with customers.
Yeah.
But the minute I realize this person's not a customer, I get righteous pretty fast.
You get pretty indignant.
Yeah. What do you think you get righteous about?
Here's what bothers me. When you're walking down when you know you're wrong.
Yeah.
And you keep going.
You can't stop.
You can't stop and you keep going.
Yeah. It's like the album's over.
Yeah.
But you're just listening anyway.
Yeah. And then you're stuck with the guy's driving you. Oh, that's a terrible one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you just go, hey, I fucked up.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I did say it. I said it though.
Yeah,
that's a step forward.
You're growing in front of me. You're growing in front of me.
I'm afraid I'm growing wider.
You're becoming you're going from a girl to a woman with a male equivalent. Some guy you're the male equivalent of when a girl becomes a woman. I don't know what that is.
Well, I'm on the back 9, as my dad used to say.
But yeah,
I'm on the back 9. I don't know what hole.
Yeah,
but I'm not on the front 9.
Yeah, I'm done with a lot of. Have you ever done this? You're walking down the street and it's late, you're walking to your car, you're walking to your apartment, there's a woman in front of you.
Yeah.
They're walking on Calm Ave one night. And I realized that this woman's walking fast.
Yeah. Your pace is not helping.
Because I'm behind her.
Yeah.
And
sense and energy.
I am the object of her fear.
That's not good.
No, and I'm just trying to go to my car.
Yeah.
And you want to say like, hey, lady, I'm not a nut. But that's the worst thing you can say. That's the worst thing you can say.
Only a nut says this.
Yeah, worst possible opening line. Yeah. I'm not a rapist. Let's get this out of the way. I'm not a rapist.
I should let you know I'm not thinking about your bum.
Out of the gate, I'm not a rapist. Yeah. Hello, my name is John. Yeah.
But there's something about walking behind a woman where you go like, they think I'm staring at
them. Yeah, late at night, or
I'm not staring at them.
They hear the footprints.
I glanced at the person because they're in front of me.
And I'm trying to think of stuff to say out loud.
Like, they looked.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You're trying to think of stuff out loud to say, like, note to self, call mom and thank her for the Bible.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't really calling your mother, because that would never be over.
Yeah.
You just make a fake call.
So true.
Like, Hi, Mom, I got you them flowers.
Yeah.
I'm bringing them by soon with cupcakes and daisies.
Oh, yeah, I'm coming by.
Yeah. You know what? I love coming by every day to come and help you.
Do you need me to wash your Bible or just something,
And
like
at that moment, of course, my phone would ring, and the person would know that wasn't real.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, now they're pretending to call their mother who's
Right.
dead. Then they think you're Norman Bates. Clearly,
Yeah,
his mother's
that's what I'm
dead.
going to call it. Are you bringing PBR?
You better bring me a 6 of PBR, or I'm going to find a time machine and have
I
you
want that
aborted.
carton of cigarettes that's $4 off.
I'm going to find a time machine and go have you aborted.
Your mother smoked, right?
Oh, yeah,
Like a
Vantage.
chimney. Oh, yeah, Vantage. Them are good.
Yeah, Vantage.
Them
And
are good.
she would smoke Vantage and drink Wild Irish Rose.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is basically like bison blood and witch hazel.
Now, what does those two smells combine to make?
Sadness, hopelessness.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
My mother smoked Virginia Slim's menthol.
Oh, God.
You couldn't even steal them from her.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Yeah, you look like you're waiting for Paul Lynde to come by and pick you up.
it's like a minty needle. You can't put it in your, you go, oh, I hate needles.
It's like smoking a minty needle.
Yeah, it's not good. You're like, oh, no. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, some of the stuff we smoked as kids because we didn't have cigarettes was like, let's smoke a pine needle. Truly, as a kid, my friend Philip Dennehy and myself went out over at Manor Ave right before Weston.
Yeah.
And we went out to the brook where there's all this like skunk
Sure,
cabbage,
yeah,
a little
sure,
skunk
sure.
cabbage
to
island
the
that we
brook.
had where we made a fort. And, we cook an egg just because you're not supposed to. Like as a kid, you're like, what are we going to do? Hey, let's cook an egg.
Born to be wild.
But it was like a robbery.
Oh,
to
yeah.
get the matches, and you bring the pan, and we're going to take
Would you
something-
hold a match under the pan? How would you
we
cook?
would make a little pine needle
you'd
fire.
Oh, okay.
And that's
fry
how it
an
all
egg.
started, where it was like, should we smoke a pine needle? Like, just you sniffing
So,
and
like a
us
lot of kids, you
Yeah.
you traveled with a skillet, like a cast, like a lot of children.
I made Philip get the pan.
Yeah, you'd have a cast iron skillet. A lot
Yeah.
of kids, you get up on a Saturday.
Sure.
You throw on your sneakers. you grab a cast iron skillet. Maybe
It was
frantically
it was the
throw
most
some-
dangerous thing we did at
Yes.
10 years old was to cook an egg out on an island.
Oh yeah, out on an island full
Egg
of dry
island.
leaves.
Yeah, skunk cabbage and dry leaves.
Oh my god.
You
Yeah.
ever
If you,
step on skunk cabbage?
oh, it's awful. It's awful. Yeah.
fantastically awful.
Nothing smells more than
That's
a skunk.
strong.
We had a skunk die in our basement.
No.
Yeah. And
For why?
he just had it. He left a note.
I'm done here.
Life in the wild has become too much.
That's fun.
I was dating a raccoon.
Didn't
But
work out.
They have, I think, 6 or 8 stink sacks.
Oh my god!
And when you get
How many do you
sprayed, just the
oh,
one.
that's good.
Just the one. He's still married, working at the Walpole State Penitentiary.
Oh, that's nice.
But
Oh, that's my mother.
uh-oh,
I'll call her back.
that's an interesting. Is that the theme from Zulu
No,
when
you
your
know
mother
what
called?
it is? It's because everyone at work has that same weird ring.
Yeah.
And I just wanted something different, so I keep putting a different one. This one's not going to work either.
What is that?
It's like armory horns or something. I don't know.
That's how you know it's your
No
mother.
one else has it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to find a ringtone. that
When
no
my
one
parents
else
have a
has.
special, it's just the sound of disappointment. It's just
So you were saying 6 or 7 skunk sacks in a skunk?
yeah. And when you get sprayed, you get one of them. When
Oh,
they
my
die,
gosh.
they all release.
Oh no!
And so it's like nothing smells more.
Jeez,
Then-
that's why
yeah.
when they get hit by a
Yeah.
car, it's all over.
Yeah, it's like it's like what David Lee Roth is to flamboyancy. Skunks are to smell.
Oh,
you
there's-
can't get more
There's a
than
saying
that.
because my friend killed a possum by mistake, didn't want to, felt absolutely horrible, like way too hurt by this, and eventually came around to this internet thinking that was, he looked it up, and Abraham Hicks says that if an animal jumps in front of your car, they're actually looking for their next way in. Like they're going out, they're done
Yeah.
being a possum or a skunk, they're
And they're
done.
trying to move
And they
up.
want to come back as something better
Yeah.
or something different.
Next stop,
Mix it up.
giraffe.
Yeah, they've been looking at birds for so long. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I want to come back as a robin or a blue jay. I'm sick of this.
I would think that if a giraffe could put words to thought.
Excuse me.
That's all right. If a giraffe could put words.
That's my skunk sack.
You blew one sack. If a giraffe could put words to thought, it would just see its reflection in a pond and think, what the fuck? I mean, they are the craziest.
That's what I look like?
They are the craziest ass animals. Oh, God love you. Are you dying?
Rain.
Oh, are you allergic to rain?
I'm allergic to discussions of how...
Good
I'm
Lord.
allergic to discussions about how I look. I felt bad for the giraffe. And immediately I just
Are you Robbie, are you dying?
I think I'm dying to feel better. You know what it is? I wake up in the middle of the night.
Oh, your eyes are you look like you look awful.
My window's wide open, and I didn't open it. So I'm
Good, let it go. You look like a healthy person reflection in a puddle.
I think how did that window just open itself? This is insane. But I have a woman who comes by once a month to clean up in case there's something I missed.
Yeah.
Usually most things I missed.
Yeah.
And just once a month, so it's not like all the time. I don't have a maid, but this woman's very nice. I've known her a long time. Comes by, and now it turns out every window in the house is open. It wasn't raining when she was here.
Yeah, but now it's raining.
But she's airing it out. It's the winter time.
Oh, good Lord.
Getting fresh air is
Oh, yeah,
one
no,
thing,
it's 10 minutes.
But now I'm sick.
Oh, for God's sake. I would think that woman would have a terrible time on the Monday after Easter Sunday. Those people, I found another egg.
Yeah, she didn't open them
Nothing
wide.
ages like an egg.
Well, or a skunk.
Oh, God.
How old do you think that skunk was when it died?
Oh, it was fully mature. I mean, we had to throw
Had it all at sex.
It was, I can't describe the smell. I mean,
You went and did this? You went and got it?
we had to get it out. And
Yeah, but
it
who's
was,
we? I mean, did you put a shovel under it?
no,
What'd
me and my
you do?
brother had to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But literally, it didn't even, it was so potent.
Ugh.
It stopped. It didn't even smell like a skunk.
Oh,
it smelled like the air was made of something else.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was, and we had to get rid of clothes. It was
washed down the basement.
It was awful, and I just like, what is the point of all that?
Yeah,
In terms of like the biological
protection for the animal, right? That's
I mean, just what about claws?
Yeah,
I
I think a porcupine probably came after the skunk and went, guess what I'm going to do?
I don't even. It's just like
I'm just going to have quills. I'm not going to even stink.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Yeah, I think
so
it's
much better
until you're trying to nap.
Yeah, it's like if it's like when people were threatened, we don't squirt diarrhea. You just make a fist. You just.
Some people might.
Wait a minute.
It's a protection element. No one's coming near you.
You know what?
Yeah.
We are one storefront away from a new self-defense technique.
I think we better just go online.
Let's do it.
Political Talk with two guys from Boston.
My first guest tonight is a noted philosopher, metaphysician, and podiatrist. He appears every Saturday evening right here in New York, the town so nice they named it twice, at the 13th Street Theater. Please welcome the one and only Brother Theodore.
I first became aware of Brother Theodore in the early 1980s when he was a regular guest on a then hip new show on every night at 12:30 called Late Night with David Letterman. Although Letterman would famously covet Johnny Carson's The Tonight Show, Late Night with David Letterman was originally the anti-Tonight Show. The Tonight Show came from Hollywood and was packed with glitzy, slick, glamorous stars. Late Night with David Letterman came from New York, and it was anything but. In the very, very early days of the show, it looked intentionally low budget and unglamorous. And the weirder the guest, the better. And among the weirdest was Brother Theodore.
You don't strike me as a real easygoing guy. But
I'm easygoing. I am an easygoing guy, and that's it.
Now, would you describe yourself as being a pessimist, though? You seem, you called this fine audience a house of pigs.
Well, I feel any intelligent person has to be a pessimist. I feel bad when I feel good, and I'm afraid I'll feel worse when I feel better, and I think there's a good reason for that. Just look around. This is not a world in which roses stay roses for long. Mm-hmm. The moment we are born, we are old enough to die. Life is a fatal disease. From hour to hour we ripen and ripen and ripen, and then from hour to hour we rot and rot and rot and rot. It is my sincere wish that immediately after my death, my head be severed from my body and that it be replaced by a bouquet of broccoli. It's the artist in me.
He was born Theodore Gottlieb in 1906. He was born into a very wealthy Jewish family who published a wide selection of fashion magazines. Unfortunately, they were a very wealthy Jewish family who published a wide selection of fashion magazines in Dusseldorf, Germany, in the first half of the 20th century. And we all know what that means. In 1938, at the age of 32, Theodore Gottlieb was imprisoned in the concentration camp at Dachau. He was released only after he signed over his family's entire fortune to the Third Reich in exchange for 1 Reichsmark. He then escaped to Switzerland, where, penniless, he supported himself by hustling chess. The Swiss didn't like that. Nice they took a side on something. And he was deported. He fled to Austria, where Albert Einstein, a family friend and, it was rumored, one-time lover of Theodore's mother, helped him emigrate to America.
Not to one among millions and millions and millions and millions of people. I'm telling you, in these days of darkness and doubt, in these days of crisis, in these days of confusion, what the world needs is a truly great soul. I am that soul. I am a cosmodynamic personality walking through life in beauty and eternal youth. I'm in the prime of my senility. Now, here on television, I probably look like a pile of mud, but that's only because television is still in its infancy. I am what you might call a controversial figure. People either hate me or despise me. They would rather shake the devil by the tail than shake me by the hand. But with every failure, David, with every failure, my reputation grows.
In America, Theodore, a once wealthy Jewish-German playboy with a family fortune at his disposal, got a job as a janitor at Stanford University. He continued to hustle chess, and the rumor once defeated 30 professors simultaneously. Fun fact, the young Stanley Kubrick also supported himself hustling chess. While in California in the 1940s, Theodore began doing dramatic recitals of Edgar Allan Poe's work, for which his particular vocal styling was eminently appropriate. Soon, however, he would begin to inject his own particular brand of very sick, very dark humor into his shows.
Rats can be trained, of course, but after we have spent years and years of training one, all you have got is a trained rat. And then what? Now, very often at night, I wake up and ponder these matters, and then I very deeply feel I should talk these problems over with Brother Theodore. And then I wake up more fully and realize and remember that I am Brother Theodore. And then my tears flow freely, and I can see my dead Aunt Marie floating in the chicken soup. I mean, never a moment's peace.
No, I know.
Never a moment's peace.
Yeah.
I mean, what next?
Theodore's onstage demeanor and performing style, in addition to his, to put it mildly, dark and caustic worldview, fit perfectly with the World War II jazzbo, coffeehouse, beatnik scene, the birth of sick humor in the 20th century. Soon he was a regular in the hipster clubs all up and down the West Coast.
Tomorrow is a drag, Pops. The future is a flake. I had a canary who couldn't sing. I had a cat that let me share my pad with her. I bought a dog that killed the cat that ate the canary. What is truth?
His success brought him to New York, where he mounted his first one-man show, a monologue called Quadrupedism, which was based on the concept that human beings should start walking on all fours.
Walking on all fours is a fact, a glorious fact, a reality more real than reality. It is living as nature meant you to live, with your vertebrae held horizontal from east to west, with your posterior pointing to the North Pole.
New York in the 1950s was a great time and place to be a hipster weirdo, and Theodore soon found himself a frequent guest on talk shows, like The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, The Merv Griffin Show, The Joey Bishop Show, The Dick Cavett Show. In one particularly memorable appearance on The Merv Griffin Show in 1966, Theodore was one of the few people at that time to profess himself acutely unamused by Jerry Lewis, then at his peak.
You even look out of your left eye.
So may I remind you, in a voice cold with loathing, that you are facing Brother Theodore, and I wonder whether you know who I am.
Yeah, you're Godzilla's dad, aren't you?
Will you translate that for me?
You're Godzilla's dad. It was a musical on Broadway. Listen, why don't you just go on with your part of the show and
do you swim in that, Squire?
I don't know. Do I swim in that?
No, listen, no. Go on with your...
Theodore continued performing regularly into the 1970s, but his popularity began to wane, so he retired. But not for long. Dick Brooks owned a magic club on the Upper East Side called the Magic Townhouse and prevailed upon Theodore to perform in a series of midnight shows. It wasn't easy, but eventually Theodore relented. In 1977, he voiced Gollum in the Rankin Bass animated version of The Hobbit. Later that year, he appeared on The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. Now, The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder aired after The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, from 1973 to 1982. The show usually had one guest for the full hour, and he had some really cool episodes. John Lennon did an episode, Elvis Costello did an episode, the Ramones did an episode, The Clash were on an episode. But in 1982, Tom Snyder was replaced by a young comedian who was Johnny Carson's heir apparent. And that show finally gave Theodore the fame that he craved.
From New York, the city that doesn't mean no harm, honest, it's Late Night with David Letterman.
Brother Theodore would make 16 appearances on Late Night with David Letterman throughout the 1980s. He was also a regular on the Billy Crystal Comedy Hour. He appeared in the film The Burbs with Tom Hanks, directed by Joe Dante. And throughout it all, he never changed. He remained, as originally described, Boris Karloff, Salvador Dali, Nijinsky, and Red Skelton simultaneously. In 2001, Theodore's longtime friend, filmmaker Jack Finelli, began a documentary about him. And just as it got underway, Theodore caught pneumonia and died. He was 94. The documentary continued. You can see parts of it on YouTube. It included interviews with Dick Cavett, Penn and Teller, Woody Allen, Eric Bogosian. He's buried in New York, and inscribed on his tombstone, one of his more famous quotes: "As long as there is death, there is hope." Here is a clip from the documentary, an interview with director Joe Dante, who sums it up quite nicely.
An Evening of the Macabre, I believe it was billed as. And And it was plenty macabre, and it was you had to hand it to him. It was a one-man show, you know. It's a guy in a candle, basically, and he was mesmerizing, you know. It was just fascinating, and apparently was the toast of the town. Apparently, if everybody was, all the celebrities were going, "Oh, you got to see Theodore," you know. He's really weird, you know. I mean, who knows what? I mean, 1947. What were people thinking about that act, you know? I mean, how much of the war years and the dark past of his was he bringing, you know, to bear on this performance, and what was it registering with people? Were they getting it? Were they understanding where it came from, or even what it was? He had a pretty unique stage presence, and it was also a pretty unique personal presence. I mean, there was a lot going on with this guy. I mean, you know, we now know that he had, you know, the kind of childhood and the kind of young adulthood that he had, and that colored obviously his view on life and pushed him into a rather dark corner.
We're happy to have you with us this evening and want you to enjoy every minute of your stay here. And while you relax and stretch, visit our concession where you'll find something to please you. There are ice-cold drinks, delicious sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
ButcherBox delivers healthy 100% grass-fed and grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken, and heritage breed pork. The incredible quality of ButcherBox meats starts with a commitment to raising animals humanely and free of antibiotics and hormones. Each box comes with at least 8 to 11 pounds of meat, which is enough for 24 individual-sized meals. You can choose from 5 different box types: all beef, beef and chicken, beef and pork, or a mixed box, or a customized box that lets you choose your own cuts. I'm a single father. I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter loves steak. ButcherBox allows me to give everybody what they want, and I make sure that they're eating healthy food that's not going to ruin them. ButcherBox carefully curates the finest selections and makes it a breeze to customize your own delivery. Build your own box to get exactly what you and your family love. And it's so convenient. It's delivered right to your door on dry ice with free shipping anywhere in the 48 states. Choose your delivery frequency with a customizable subscription. And now announcing Wild Alaskan Salmon. ButcherBox sources their pure, sustainably harvested salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Unlike any salmon you'll find in your local stores, literally, its red color means that this salmon is as fresh and nutrient-rich as it gets. For $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free salmon, go to butcherbox.com/DGH and enter the promo code DGH. That's right. $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free salmon. Go to butcherbox.com/DGH and enter the promo code DGH. You know what was awful? World War II. No, seriously. And after World War II, the globe was deeply traumatized as the nations of the world put themselves back into some form of civilized order. In America, which, by and large, emerged comparatively unscathed, losing 500,000 people compared to, say, Russia, who lost 24 million people. But America is where we live, so let's talk about what America did. Deeply traumatized by the effects of the war, American culture slipped into more than a decade of quiet conformity. Or so it hoped.
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days.
Yes, it was the America of happy days. Clean-cut, fresh-faced kids in bobby socks and varsity jackets. And everywhere you looked, everybody was happy and well-fed and smiling, as long as they were white. Although women became a large part of the American workforce during the war, once the soldiers returned home, women were unceremoniously ushered back into the kitchen or the bedroom, where they began dutifully giving birth to the baby boom. America in the 1950s was about, if nothing else, cultural conformity, with television acting as a visual guidebook. But as they say, to every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And in the 1950s, there were many disparate streams of rebellion to counter the tidal wave of white middle-class conformity. The biggest and most important movement was the burgeoning civil rights movement. Black music seeped into white culture through rock and roll. At least once a white guy started singing it. And in the world of literature and pop culture, there were the beatniks.
This is only for the cool cats. Sterile creeps can crawl out now. Upon a certain birthday, dear parents, we do not thank you, dear fumbling mother and father, both, upon this miserable occasion. We give you offerings of respectful loathing.
The Beat movement, also called the Beat Generation, was an American social and literary movement originating in the 1950s. It was centered in the bohemian artist communities of North Beach in San Francisco, Venice in Los Angeles, and Greenwich Village in New York. Beatniks was a derisive nickname taken from beat, meaning weary, but later said to mean beatitude or beatific, as in beat and down with the world and spirituality. Although it was largely a literary movement, beatniks took their look, their manners, their style, and their hipster slang-fueled vocabulary from jazz and bebop. But to that end, beats loved word jazz, taking poetry and literature out of the hallowed halls of academia and bringing it back to the street. Allen Ginsberg's Howl being probably the most famous poem associated specifically with the beatnik era.
I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn, looking for an angry fix.
But the Beatnik Bible was On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Born to French-Canadian parents in Lowell, Massachusetts, Kerouac was a novelist and a poet whose rambling style of prose aped the free-form notes of jazz, as if to read his writing was, dare I say it, an act of jazz.
There was a little alley in San Francisco, back of the Southern Pacific Station at 3rd and Townsend, in red brick of drowsy, lazy afternoons with everybody at work in offices. In the air you feel the impending rush of their commuter frenzy. As soon they'll be charging en masse for market and Sansom buildings on foot and in buses and all well-dressed through working man Frisco of walk-up truck drivers.
Working man Frisco of walk-up. That was Jack Kerouac and Tonight Show host Steve Allen on the piano. Ginsberg's Howl, Kerouac's On the Road, William Burroughs' Naked Lunch. Beatniks rejected the conformist, consumerist society of America in the 1950s and embraced personal release, purification, and illumination through the heightened sensory awareness that might be induced by drugs, jazz, sex, and, of course, Zen Buddhism. They wore French shirts and berets, smoked too much, drank espresso, and read their poems in places like the Café Wa in Greenwich Village and Lawrence Ferlinghetti's City Lights bookstore in San Francisco. Both venues still around, by the way. As the 1950s became the 1960s, beatniks entered popular culture. The popular sitcom Dobie Gillis had a regular character who was a beatnik, bongo-playing Maynard G. Krebs, portrayed by pre-Gilligan Bob Denver. From there, they became sort of a cartoon stereotype, showing up in everything from Frankie Avalon and the Nat Funicello Beach Party movies to, well, the Munsters.
Dictionary? Down the ferry. Mary, Mary, quite contrary.
As the 1960s became the late 1960s, the beatnik movement got absorbed by the much more wild and crazy hippie movement, which was much more concerned with stopping the war in Vietnam than it was with the academic co-option of poetry. Jack Kerouac died in 1969 from issues related to cirrhosis of the liver. You can guess how he got that. But the beatniks were an indelible part of the birth of 20th century American counterculture. I always thought I'd be much more prone to being a beatnik than I would to being a hippie. To begin with, beatniks had cooler clothes, and for my dollar, hotter chicks.
My old man was a bread stasher all his life. He never got fat. He wound up with a used car, a 17-inch screen, and arthritis. Tamara is a drag, man. Tamara is a king-sized bust. They cry, put down pot, don't think a lot. For what? Time, how much, and what to do with it. Sleep, man, and you might wake up digging the whole human race, giving itself 3 days to get out. Tamara is a drag, Pops. The future is a flake. I had a canary who couldn't sing. I had a cat that let me share my pad with her. I bought a dog that killed the cat that ate the canary. What is truth? I had an uncle with an Ivy League heart. He had life with a belt in the back. He had a button-down brain, wind up, a belt in the mouth, and a button-down lip. We coughed blood on this earth. Now there's a race for space. We can cough blood on the moon soon. Tamara is Dragsville cats. Tamara is a king-size drag. Tula fast shorts, swing with a gassy chick, turn on to 1,000 joys, smile on what happened or check what's going to happen, you'll miss what's happening. Turn your eyes inside and dig the vacuum. Tamara drag.
No one else is better suited not only to end up the year, but for this specific year, which has been so insane. Mike Carano is here.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
That's way too much of a build-up, considering that years ago when you asked me to be on the podcast and talk about Disneyland, I declined because I felt like I was not up to par with you and your guests, and it scared the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm. And you were wrong.
Oh,
you're one. You and I go on the road. The people, they want you, and they want Pepitone.
Oh, Pepitone's great.
Yeah,
Eddie's great.
Yeah, who I'm convinced is, there's Eddie. If I could clone myself, so I could have another, I would manage Eddie and make him the new Brother Theodore.
Yeah.
Because we need.
That's so funny because I think about that all the time too. I think of somebody and I go, I'd like to manage that person's career because you see some. Yeah, and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Second of all, I also think I'd like to drive a tractor and a big rig. I'm not going to do that.
I'd like to drive a tractor, but on the freeway when everyone else is going really fast.
Someone's already tried that.
And I'm just cranking it slow. It's a straight story. It's the David Lynch movie.
Yeah. Remember the dude with the tank in San Diego that stole the tank and drove down the freeway and they shot him?
No.
Yeah, they stuck the gun in the top of the tank and just fired randomly until one of the bullets ricocheted and killed him.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a terrible ending. 20 years ago, he got onto the freeway. And believe it or not, he got stuck.
How did he steal a tank?
I don't know. But I bet they're easier to steal than you think.
We should, probably.
Because it's not like...
my brother drove one, and he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
He drove a tank?
In the Army,
in the Army, yeah. I went to Vegas once and paid $125 to drive a tractor.
I've driven a tractor before.
Yeah, it was all right.
I bought my midlife crisis car was a 1960 something Ambassador Regal station wagon. It weighed about 4 tons. I drove it twice. It was literally like driving the Minnow.
Yeah.
And
that's why they call them a boat.
Yeah, and I said, I fucking hate this thing, and I can't wait to get rid of it.
That's an interesting midlife crisis car. You didn't go for speed and power.
No, I was trying to embrace my. I want to be a cool old guy.
And you went Jimmy Buffett.
I want to be Tom Waits, just
absolutely.
like I'm not, like. But here's the thing: I want to be my version of Tom Waits.
Absolutely.
Like I don't want to wear baggy pants and an old pork pie hat and dress like a fucking hobo because it's 2018. But I do want to be like, I'm cool. And
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about a couple days ago. I was thinking about Anthony Bourdain dying, and I wasn't like
Is that the only thing that gets you going?
That's it. That's it. I couldn't get it up, and I was like Anthony Bourdain hanging from his scarf.
Oh yeah.
But I was thinking about.
He did he scarf?
I don't remember. He hung himself, but
he hung himself with David Carradine's legs.
That one blew over pretty fast. Kung Fu killing himself. We kind of made a few jokes and then was like, what's next?
When's Key Luke gonna die, for God's sakes?
When's the next spiritual television leader? But I was thinking about why I liked Anthony Bourdain so much, and it was exactly what you said about Tom Waits. I like people who find their thing, whether it's my thing or not. Because that Tom Waits isn't my thing, but I would like to be Tom Waits. I want to be comfortable in my own skin. I want to be able to wear whatever I want to wear.
Yeah.
And not give a shit, and he can pull it off. I couldn't pull it off.
No, because but you pull off what you do.
I've been expanding this. Like I wore a cowboy hat out in public for the first time, and I did it to like get out of my comfort zone and try to find a fuck you attitude. I'm sorry about the profanity, but try to find a I don't care what people think attitude.
Yeah,
and it was difficult.
I've used the Lost Leuven brother, so it really works well.
Thanks.
And why did
the lost one?
Yeah, the Lost Leuven. Why did you? Now you wore a cowboy hat on stage. But you were not singing. You were just.
I sang some songs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I had this weird epiphany.
Self-written?
I honestly had this weird. I have a couple of albums out, but I don't like to talk about that because I'm really, really, really bad at self-promotion. So I have my little audience of podcast listeners who buy everything.
Are they country western songs?
Some of them are, but they're not. They're not. But
supposedly Rick Moranis has made.
I hope this is true.
Giant living writing country songs.
I hope so.
And Al Anderson from NRBQ moved to Nashville and was writing country songs. I would think. Do you listen to Cocaine and Rhinestones?
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a great podcast.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And you do think like, I could, it's like, I could write that.
No.
Those, what songs are hard to write? Martin Mull's stuff. That's hard.
What does he do?
Martin Mull's albums are hilarious. They're all from the 70s. They're beautiful songs and they're all hilarious.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He has a song. I'm just gonna he had one song like saddle up your buckboard, crack your whip, tell the horse that the course is the mighty Mississippi.
That's great.
Take your strongest son and shoot the rest. Sell your daughter with the biggest breasts, for we'll need that money when we get out west. Headed for the Cumberland Gap.
I love that you know all those lyrics.
Oh yeah. Headed westward underneath the Texas moon. It's an easy song, it's a sing-along, but the banjo's out of tune. Headed westward, and we brought along the sheep. They're loads of fun when the day is done and it's time to go to sleep.
Was he doing that before WKRP?
That's how... yes, that's how he became famous.
Yeah, okay.
Doing Troubadour in the early 70s. His roommate was Steve Martin.
That is great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Martin Mull, crazy well-known American painter.
Yes,
I own
that.
a Martin Mull.
Great.
Yeah.
Did you buy it from him?
No, I bought it at a really great auction that's probably coming up that my friend Chris McCall does called Fresh Start. And look it up, Fresh Start Art Auction.
Is it what it implies? Like,
no, it's all the top artists around in the area, all donate a piece. And you go to this hangar at Santa Monica Airport, and it's a silent auction.
Does it benefit something?
All the money benefits art programs for schools in Los Angeles.
That's great. That's great.
It's great. Yeah.
How much did you pay for that?
I don't even remember.
Just want to
it was back when I was rich.
And your mortgage. How much is that?
It was back when I was rich and didn't care. I was married, rich, had the world. I was married, I was rich, I had the world on a string, and I thought, how do I fuck this up?
That's right, me too.
And you know what?
I do that with everything.
And you know what? I've never stopped fucking paying. Mike, I've never stopped paying. I'd like to stop paying. My ex-wife and I are fine. We get on great. I was at that house last night till about midnight. I only live 4 minutes away, and she was the first person I saw this morning. We're going on vacation together. We're taking the kids. We're taking the kids away for from the 21st to the 3rd.
Is she seeing someone else?
Yeah. I can't stop paying.
You have two solutions to this. Make a lot more money or make no money.
Yeah, that's the trick.
Because some people go to that, screw it, man. I'm going to buy an Airstream and live in a shack somewhere. And
I had this year. Well, let's talk about you.
And just walk around with your pockets flipped out.
Yeah, like a hobo. We're back to Tom Waits.
You know what I realized?
We're back to Tom Waits.
When you quoted those Martin Mull songs, it reminded me of something spectacular that happened. And this might not be that. To me, it was really a wonderful experience. I went to a friend's wedding, and we were kind of grumpy about it. My friend Anderson and I went. We're like, let's just get out of here as fast as we can. And she goes, I sat you at a really cool table. I was like, okay. We were going to split before we ate, but okay. And we're sitting there, and there's a really old lady across from me. There's a dude at the head of the table with his sunglasses on, and then a woman sitting next to me. And the old lady goes, I don't understand this Uber and this internet. And I was like, oh, great. I got to sit next to this lady the whole time. And then we made a connection over sobriety. And she became my new best friend. And she was Fanny Flagg.
Fanny Flagg. Yeah.
And she was wonderful. And then the woman next to me goes, what do you guys do? And I go, I'm unemployed. And then my friend goes, he's making a documentary. And I go, he just made a film, which is really dark. And they talked to us about our projects for close to an hour. They were super intrigued. And then I went, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I know who you are. Sherry Lansing. I go, I know who you are. And then her husband, William Friedkin, takes the sunglasses off and just leaned in. And we had the most personal, best time. And I asked him about Johnny Cash. And he said, I flew to Nashville once to record an intro for a movie where Johnny Cash was reading Bob Dylan lyrics. And I go, do you remember the lyrics? And he stared me in the face and quoted for a minute.
Sure.
Precise. And I was like, that's how you know he's really into it. That's how you know it meant something, when you can remember like something that happened 20, 25 years ago. And he started and just went right through the entire song.
Wow.
And you reminded me of that when you sang Martin Mull.
Yeah. I have weird memory. Like I can remember certain things really clearly. And then, but like from 5 minutes, I once blanked on my sister-in-law's name at a party.
Oh, yeah.
What's your name?
Oh, I do that all the time. I do that all the time. All the time.
And I used to blame it on artificial sweetener, but I don't do that anymore.
I love blaming things on things.
But so how would now you, because you had this has been you're in a better place at the beginning of the year. You're in a better place now than you were in
Absolutely.
January.
This has been probably one of the most.
It's been a watershed year for you.
It has. It's been every.
We should say we're both nude.
We're
here.
Yeah.
We're drinking.
We turned off the hot tub just so for the podcast. We're drinking. That'll be fun.
We're drinking some.
And Dana, another thing is fuck this guy too. I want it.
We made our own beer, and we're.
Can you imagine us trying to make our own beer? I wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
There's something called hops. That's all I know. Can you get that? Because I'm broke. Go to the beer store. I honestly think, and this is weird to say, I had a great year because it was the most learning, changing year I've ever had. And I haven't changed completely.
But you started the year by like walking away from everything.
I quit my job of 30 years to make a movie, and then I fell apart. Right. And I went through the deepest regrets, like leaving my identity behind and just not being able to live up to expectations, which is, I still have that, but not nearly as much as I did. You know, I got this money to make this movie, and I called Bobcat, and he was super supportive, and I knew he would be because I work on his project. So I called Judd, and Judd was like, this is the perfect thing for you. I'll do whatever I can. And then I called a friend from Netflix just to get technical specs, and she's like, come in tomorrow and I'll give you money. And I went to bed for a month. I was like, I can't live up to her, to either of those guys. And I truly just got severely, severely dark and depressed. But I've been with therapy and learning how to meditate. I'm not saying it's better, but I
meditate and yoga. I've started to do.
I have changed dramatically.
Just to wear the pants. I'm wearing the pants now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just to sit in a weird pose and creep people out in a park. That's worth it. But it's it's been all over the
Did you
map.
do TM?
No, I went to my ex and I went and took a preliminary seminar to do it, and by the end of the hour, I'm 1,000% sold.
Yeah, no, TM is the greatest.
But I was like, I'm absolutely doing this. And then I looked at her and I went, how much do you think this costs? And she goes, I'm pretty sure it's free. And it wasn't.
TM is free and it's beautiful.
No, it's $1,500 if you go to the TM Institute.
Yeah, no, I know. I paid that.
Yeah.
but it was worth it. You go to a party with David Lynch and,
Yeah.
You know, your instructor was Tom
That's the
Petty's
reason you go. David Lynch and...
David, why can't you end anything? Come on. Meditation ends 20 minutes and it's over.
I know, exactly. But no, I honestly
What happens at the end? A man you've never met walks in with a coat hanger. Okay, great. Thanks.
So relaxing. I love what's happened this year. I've changed my perspective on a lot of stuff. I get out of things quicker, like out of my head quicker. It's not perfect. I'm still yesterday I was in bed all day, but I mean, it's not. They're very, very rare.
All day. You don't get out.
Well, I was sick also, but I was just laying in bed watching YouTube videos on engraving watches. I watch anything. I'll watch anything to distract me from real life. Anything. Forging an aluminum wheel, 40 minutes. I'm like, I'm in. No, I swear to God. I watched a guy make noodles for 25 minutes in silence. And it was like some food judging competition. They're like, Chef Kiyosaki wants to make this in silence so people can, and it was just plain noodles in a bamboo bowl over boiling water, 25 minutes. And I watched the whole thing. And that's one of hundreds that I've watched.
No,
I wanted noodles.
I just came from one of the top 5 worst weekends of my life.
Yeah. You're putting up an exceptional front for that because
I think I've learned as my I've learned to
internalize that anger and let it out on traffic.
To deal with it better and I hate to say this term because it's sweaty, but to parent myself.
Yeah. I believe you're completely correct in that. And I think it's the best thing we've ever done for ourselves. Yeah. I really do. And I also think part of the project that I'm trying to make started off as a movie about death.
And grief.
But it's slowly turning into a movie about this is all a big joke. Like why we're so stressed out about all this stuff. And it's really just a big fucking joke because we're going to die.
I'll tell you a funny story. Everyone knows I talk about it all the time. I was friends with Mila Nurmi. I was friends with the woman that was vampire.
Yeah, I think about that all the time.
She passed away when she was, I think, 84.
Like 10 years ago, right?
10 years ago. In fact, coming up, January 18th, I think, 2008.
Is she buried in Los Angeles?
Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
Oh, great.
Right in front of Darren McGavin.
Are you kidding me? I've been there 20 times. I've never seen her grave or his grave.
It's a small stone.
Going today.
And I just thought it was kind of funny that Darren McGavin would be chasing a vampire for eternity.
Unreal. That's better than the super creepy Hugh Hefner stalking Marilyn Monroe.
Still stalking Marilyn Monroe. I'm sure she's delighted. Mila lived to nurse her grudges. She was angry at KTLA for what they did to her with the Elvira show, which she did get screwed. And
absolutely,
it's not Cassandra Peterson.
No, and I love Cassandra Peterson.
I do too. She's an actress. She was working. It had nothing to do with it.
And by the way, have you ever seen a more attractive woman at that age?
No.
She's in her 70s, and she looks stunning in person.
Yeah. No, I have I'm frequently in a tree outside of her house.
Just trees? When did she plant those?
No, she lived to nurse her grudges, and then one day she went to bed and didn't wake up.
Yeah. Did you take a lesson from that?
I did. I exactly that. It was just like one day nothing mattered, and I thought, you could have all of those lunches we had at Musso and Frank's with her railing against, Orson Welles for giving her the clap, whoever, And
you're just like, I love this story. Keep it coming. Your bitterness.
Yeah. But it was just like, she could have been, happy.
Yeah.
I also think she was undiagnosed and needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah.
I loved her. I loved her. And, but yeah, one day you just don't wake up. So it's really a choice. I remember in 1994.
I'm sorry, but where's the funny part of this story?
Of the Milo story?
Yeah.
There is no funny story.
Oh, I thought you said there's a really funny story. I thought there was going to be some weird twist.
Funny story.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Interesting. Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm fucking her. Great story.
Now I got the clap, and I love it.
Yeah, and at her age,
Orson Welles clap.
Yeah, it was like fucking a garbage bag full of walnuts, but it was still great.
Those are tumors.
I had the first time, like I really, I went home to visit my family in July of 1994, and it's hard to put into words, but just a bunch of crap happened that really underscored the dysfunction in the relationship that I had with my my family of origin, and something in me flipped, and a lifetime, 30 years of rage got let out, and I didn't sleep for 11 days. I don't remember sleeping.
Yeah.
I don't remember sleeping. I'm sure I slept because I'd been dead. At the end, because I was also in the middle, I had to do a gig in Boston, and then I had to go back and move. So my life was completely...
San Francisco is where you were living?
No, I was living in Santa Monica, and I was moving to Beechwood Canyon, to my apartment that I ended up loving. But everything in my life was like...
Turmoil.
Turmoil and unplugged. And I just couldn't sleep. And after a couple of days, I know I must have slept, because you can't go that long without sleeping. You can't go 11 days.
Yeah. Did you tell the story on Joe Frank's show?
Yeah, I did. But I was quite literally psychotic.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at...
It mathematically makes sense, too. The lack of sleep and the brain issues and stuff. Yeah.
And I ended up at Cedars. And then I had to call my dad and my parents and kind of give like, you guys aren't doing your fucking job. And that was great. And my relationship with them is terrific. This year.
It sounds like there's way more to that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just did this and everything's fine.
No, I did. And
I know.
I started taking meds, which really helped. And I've had 3 or 4 at the end of, and I've had 3 or 4 times in my life when that has happened again. One, when I realized I can't sleep. I'll lay down to go to sleep because I'm just exhausted. And then my heart will start ripping through my chest.
Your overthinking brain.
And I got to get up.
Yeah.
And then you can't live your life. You're a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, this is the worst feeling in the world. It's Wednesday for everybody here but me. I'm still in Monday because I haven't slept in 2 fucking days.
Yeah. Yeah. Lack of sleep is so...
It's the worst.
It's not an excuse.
Outside those sleigh bells ringing. This is the Christmas episode.
But yeah, what'd you do about that?
Well, this was a really great year for me. And at the very, very, very end of the year, everything fell apart in a 1-week period. The show got canceled. I was trying to sell it to some other venues. They all passed. My relationship ended a little bit out of the blue, and my mom's not well. And I had all of these things happen in a very compact amount of time. And again, it just tripped something. Freud said there are 3 major motivators in life: love, work, death. And I kind of had all 3 in 1 week. And I had to go from there to be alone in a hotel room in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it happened again. I was like, oh, I've been here before. Didn't sleep. And then immediately my psychosis hits in. And I'm alone in a hotel room in San Francisco thinking, okay, I can do a show tonight really tired because I haven't slept in 36 hours. Or I can just run down the street until someone catches me and puts me in the hospital. But fortunately now I have a support. I have a lot of great friends.
Yeah, good.
And I meditate, and there's no one no one is a villain in this. No one did a bad thing. Timing the show ran its course. I had dinner with the guy from IFC 2 nights ago. He's still my friend. It just, these things happen.
You got to go.
None of
really,
it's personal. It was just like boom, and then you crash.
I've had this exact experience when I was mad at the Improv, where I picked someone. I'm like, that person hates me. I got in my car. I'm driving over Laurel Canyon. By the time I got to the club, I was shaking with anger, and I made it up in my head because it's like a drug. Like looking back and reflecting on things and making them worse. You know how you do it with exes all the time. My ex was wonderful, and sometimes I'll be like, you fucking horrible person. I'm like, I'm making this up to pick a fight with somebody who didn't do anything.
Right.
And it's like when, I don't know, for me, I like chaos because that's what I came from, and that's where I'm comfortable. Which is why I will push things and be late. Like almost be late, because getting somewhere early, there's no chaos. I like the frantic, I'm late, oh my God.
The reason my house was in chaos, my show got canceled. So I said, I'm painting my house. I need to take an action. I need to do something.
Yeah.
You know, my show got canceled. My walls are too dark.
I can tell you the greatest feeling of joy I've ever had in my life.
Finding porn in the woods?
Absolutely. I went there weeks ago. I was in Tucson for Thanksgiving, and I drove the route. And this happened in the 3rd or 4th grade.
Here's my question. This is a joke for my act.
Mm-hmm.
Where I go, you had to find it in the woods.
Yeah.
Wherever I go in the country. I just did a big tour. Philadelphia, Atlanta, Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, San Francisco. Every city I went to, every guy in the audience, ha, 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 ha. What the fuck was all that porn doing out in the woods? How did it get in the woods? Is there like a beat-off Santa that flies around the world airlifting whack mags into the forest? Happy masturbation, ho, ho, ho.
I had not even masturbated at the time, and we were walking home from school.
I was just like, fuck, man, 20 questions with Lee Marvin. Guys,
8-year-old. Look at this.
Guys, new fiction from Joyce Carol Oates.
I was leaving Cragen Elementary. We walked through the playground, and somebody had left stacks and stacks of Playboys and Penthouses, and my heart raced it never has raced, and I carried as many as I could home and hid them, and it was the greatest rush in my life. I don't even remember why, but I was just like, I found a pile of money. I found enough. It was pure joy.
Yeah, it was my drug of choice. I've never done drugs.
Yeah, you know why? Because it's a bonding experience. Even though it's masturbating, it still feels like you're intimately connecting to somebody.
Well, also, and I was just exposed to it too young. My dad subscribed to Penthouse, and then there was a summer.
Jesus.
And there's not even Playboy. Penthouse, which Penthouse is very close to that map over the deli of how they cut up a cow. It's just cold cuts at a certain point. And then there was a summer when I was 14 years old where my parents separated, and my mom and my sister moved to Virginia. My brothers were too old to live, and I shared a studio apartment with my dad, and we weren't really speaking, and the furniture was made of Penthouses. It was just like the coffee table was a stack of Penthouses. The chair,
wow,
yeah, it was like a Jim Thompson novel, and yeah, I mean, it's a miracle that I can dress myself and function, and so that was, but the reason I was telling the story is so I walked out of my marriage like, oh my God, I've totally trashed this. It's like, okay, you can't, outside of killing somebody while driving drunk, you did it. Way to go.
I think there's a big chasm between those two, though.
But what I mean is, like, to me, it's like there's not much else than, and then.
But, holy moly, that just hit me like a rock. You're right. You did it. There you go. Because there's few things that really push you over that it's too late.
And you get to tell your kids, hey.
Yeah. But I mean, I was drunk and I was driving home and I hit a kid, and now there's no going back.
Yeah, no going back. And my whole motive in relationships now is just like, I don't want to fuck up. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Apparently, and for some people, not doing anything isn't enough.
Well, you can also, people change too, you know? I mean,
what do you want out of this relationship? Well, my partner doesn't do anything.
I've been in that situation. I've had girlfriends get angry at me because I won't pick where we go to dinner. I go, what do you want to eat?
They want to know, yeah.
I know, but I've been wherever I think I'm being courteous.
Yeah.
Anywhere you want to go, I will happily go. And they're like, why don't you pick one time?
Yeah.
I've had the exact, and you know the end of the story.
No,
I go, let's go get pizza. I don't want pizza. I'm like, okay, what is it then?
But they want, they just, look, I'm not good at riding horses because you're supposed to kick them hard and point them where you want them to go. I'm like,
plus it's very, the whole thing is illogical.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I mean, little spindly legs with a giant heavy body.
I've described it as being dragged through the woods on a motorcycle that hates you.
yes. And, even if it acts like it doesn't hate you, it hates you.
I was in Montana and we're at this ranch and I have to kick this horse and I don't like it. And we're walking literally on the edge of a giant ravine.
Yeah, and all of your trust is in this animal.
Yeah, and my daughter is in front of me and like her horse is having a miscarriage and she's like, you know, she was born to ride a horse. And my horse is looking at me out of the side of his eye like, why don't you kick me again?
I'm sorry. Take that literally for something. Horses having but they're still like, get her out there.
Yeah, my horse is looking at me.
We got $24.
Yeah, my horse is looking at me like, yeah, kick me again. And I'm right on the side of this ravine. I'm like, no, Mr. Horse. What could have happened to me last weekend could have been as bad as what happened to me in 1994. Like I really could have, and I felt it. I've only had the dark come about 4 times in my life.
I think me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the dark comes hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it
comes the hardest because you could end up like Drake Sather or one of these guys.
Yeah. And because people don't understand, and people don't understand, like Drake said, a friend of ours who took his life. People don't kill themselves because they want to die.
No, they want to end the pain.
They just don't want to feel like this anymore.
And we get it, and other people get it. And you know, I had a. This isn't very funny, but I had what could be.
Well, I might laugh.
Considered a miracle. Probably the darkest time where for sure something bad was going to happen. And I knew it when I got in my car. I'm like, this is it. And it wasn't like I need to let anyone know. I'm just done. And everything was gray. And I had no reason. I felt like I had no reason to be here. And I was just done. And I drove from San Diego to Orange County. And I was just looking for an overpass I was just thinking about it. But I knew in my heart. And I got a call on a Sunday from my dermatologist at Cedars, who I still know, Millard Zisser, and he goes, I hate to bother you about this, but it's my mom's birthday, and I wondered if you could print me a couple photos for her. And I just started sobbing. And he drove to Orange County.
Oh my God!
Gave me his Xanax. I printed the photos, took me to lunch, and convinced me to go to therapy. And I was like, I should go talk to him actually and go, you don't have no idea what that day was.
Yeah.
And I go, what was that weird intervention where a guy who's never called me in his life, he's a doctor at Cedars.
Oh, yeah, no, that happens.
And he just randomly called me for some insane reason.
I have this, for the first time I like really couldn't sleep in 94, which was really the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah. I can't even fathom it because especially with kids and especially all this time built up because just a regular breakup for me sends me.
No, I'm talking about 1994.
Okay. I thought you were talking about your divorce.
No. That was nothing. I mean, I was ideating. I was like, I lived in Santa Monica at the time and I was like, today, my out was if it gets too bad today, I can just walk in the ocean. I can pull a Bruce Dern from Coming Home. And just do it. And my shrink lips.
That's possibly the hardest way to kill yourself because the minute the water goes in your nose, you're going to be like, no, I got to get out of here.
Well, that was, of course, look at my podcast.
I'm going to eat myself to death when I'm just sitting in a buffet. People are like, this is not going to happen.
I'm going to fuck old ladies to death till I'm dead. But that allows you to live the day. That allows you to do the day. So if it gets too bad, I can do this. that gives you permission to not do it.
Was it Bob Hope? You would be the person that knows the story, and maybe I even heard it on your podcast, was telling people that just hit on the older women because they're easier.
Boy, I don't know. I don't know that one.
I heard a story. Somebody said that Bob Hope told them just, after a show and stuff, just find the women in their 40s because they're much easier and they're divorced.
Yeah, well, they do have something to prove.
I know that.
Yeah. Wow. But I believe it. Bob was a dirty bird.
Yeah, he sure was.
But so like I was crazy. Like I was in Cedars,
mm-hmm.
and the first thing.
What happens when you check in there for a mental thing?
My managers at the time called me up, and it was like one of those things. It was like they said, we called you up and asked you how you're doing, and you talked about boxes for 20 minutes. It was just because I don't remember it. I had to move, and they said, so we came and got you.
I brought someone to the hospital who had a very similar situation like a month ago, and we spent 12 hours in the hospital.
Yeah.
And they released her with the diagnosis of anxiety. And I was like, it's not anxiety.
Yeah. Well,
it's
awful. They spent the first 6 hours, what drug are you on?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they get the blood and he's not on anything.
Yeah.
And then
And back then it wasn't as prevalent, or they weren't as prepared for it as now, because.
And then they had to do this weird test that I remember, and I don't even remember why it was. They said, spell world. And I said, W-O-R-L-D. And they said, now spell it backwards. I was like,
hell.
D-L-R-O-W. And they went, good. I don't know what that meant.
Maybe there's a brain condition that something snaps in your brain. Oh, my friend that I took to the hospital, she had a piercing headache that was the worst headache she's ever had. And then it was just gibberish after that. And that to me was an aneurysm. And clearly I don't know what it is. I'm an idiot. But I was like, I kept telling the doctor, she had a piercing headache, the worst she's ever had. And they just blew past that. And I was like, eh.
But then the psychiatrist on call at Cedars, finally they said, okay, this guy's not on drugs. We don't know what's going on with him. And he came in, and he's still my psychiatrist. I saw him yesterday. And
really?
Yeah, I saw him.
Wow.
And he said, oh yeah, no, this is somnambulistic hypervigilance. And they just give it the clinical term. They tell you what's going on in your brain. They prescribe medication. They tell you what the medication does.
Did they have antidepressants back then?
Yeah, it was 94.
Okay.
I'm on the same medication now that I was then. Zoloft and Klonopin when I need it. but
yeah, one of those spear hats with a prescription bottle on each side.
But they say all that does is allows you to stabilize, so you can then do the work. Otherwise, you're just painting over mold.
Absolutely, yeah. I learned that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so funny because it was like you think, well, I'm crazy. I mean, I remember thinking, well, I'm crazy. My brain broke. Whatever the machine is in my brain that makes me sleep doesn't work anymore. I'm now going to stay awake till I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
And
I imagine that happens to people.
I think it has happened once.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh,
eventually
shoot.
you just collapse. And then
I don't know. I said shoot because I didn't want it to be on par with all the pot people who are like, pot's never killed anybody. I'm like,
but no, it's really, really,
harrowing. I mean, it's.
But then, the point that I was trying to make, and we were talking about this earlier, you learn, and as you go through life, you acquire more tools.
Absolutely.
Like my guy said yesterday, it's like you're handling this. I said, like, if I didn't have my meds with me in San Francisco, it would have been 1994 again because I was triggered by too many things. My economic security just went out the window. My living situation is shitty.
In turmoil.
Yeah. Personal thing went kablooey. And it was just all these triggers in a short amount of time. And he said, no, you're handling it much better.
I absolutely.
You learn how to,
I find myself bragging.
And then he called me a tubby little faggot. I'm like, what?
Little?
Yeah. And he's like, you heard me.
You heard me. Get on my office.
That's a Drake. Do you remember that Drake Sather? We're talking about Drake Sather. Do you know what that is? Our friend Drake Sather had this.
I was walking around Fresno. Is that it?
No. What was that one?
I'm I was walking around Fresno, and these guys pulled up in a hot car and said, "Get out of our town, faggot." And I just couldn't run away because I was wearing a tight miniskirt.
Yeah, this is 1990.
I know that's not appropriate to use that word, but
you could say it then.
Well, my favorite joke of his by far.
Rudy?
What?
That's a joke. I was thinking, I found when I hold my son.
Absolutely.
I found that when I hold my son, I got an erection. And I said to the doctor, "Is this normal?" And he called me a faggot baby fucker.
He added more to that later on.
Yeah,
it was just so great. Like, give it to me straight, doc. Don't sugarcoat it. Medicalese, faggot baby fucker. What does that mean? What a great joke.
He had my favorite, one of my top 5 all-time favorite jokes was, you ever see a homeless guy with a dog? And the dog's thinking, hey, I can do this on my own. I don't need to sleep in the park and be on a leash.
So much. He's one of the first people that came back to the Improv after we quit doing stand-up and wouldn't go on stage. And I remember going, "How'd you let that go?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Just go for 5 minutes." "I don't want to. I have no desire." And I was like, "How did
Alex?" I was talking to Alex. You know Alex Reed?
Yeah.
I talked to him this weekend. He's just like, I can't let it go. I'm going on. I have a spot.
I get it.
I have a spot tonight.
It's good that you can't let it go because it's instant feedback. And you know what it means? You're true. Yeah, you're great at it, and you're true to it, which is the most important thing as far as a career goes, in my opinion. Is fine. If you dream to be a comedian, you want to be a comedian. Be it whether you're on TV or whether you're just performing, because you're doing it.
Yep.
I mean, that's a big step. It's the same thing with musicians, because when I was a kid, I'd look at people playing in bars and go, "What happened to that guy? He never made it." But then you realize when you're older, oh, he did make it. He's 50 playing music.
Yeah, that's how. I mean,
he's not rich. But he's not sitting in an office selling insurance.
I don't.
No offense.
I just did five weekends in 6 weeks, and I don't want to do
It's a lot. No. I get it. I get it.
That was exhausting, and I'm just like I was like, I'm too old for this shit.
Well, I went out 5, 7, 8 years ago with Bobcat for 2 weeks to shoot stuff.
Yeah.
And like 4 days into it, I ran into him at like 6 a.m. outside the hotel, and he goes, "You all right?" And I went, "No." I go, "I hate this. I hate going to radio stations. I hate being in a city that I'm not comfortable in."
Yeah.
And I go, "I'm sorry, and I appreciate this, and I'm having fun with you, but I go, I'm not happy. I'm not comfortable, and I'm not happy." And I thought about comics. I thought about Richard Jenny getting up.
Yeah, and it's why comics comics that I have, like, who name a comic that I have nothing in common with. I don't even know who it is. Whoever, it doesn't matter. Yeah, whoever. But we'll meet
and you bond.
Yeah, because it's like we're both Navy SEALs.
Absolutely, it's the best.
Yeah,
that's the best. That's one of the best parts about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not even a comic, and I'd rather hang out with comics than hang out with regular people any day of the week. And if I go to a party that I'm uncomfortable at and I see a comic, even if it's someone I don't know, it's like instantly we can be like.
It's so funny. At the height of my when I was married and my wife was running HBO, and I would go to these parties, I literally remember going, "Oh, fucking Vanity Fair Oscar party."
Yeah.
And I would go there, and it would end up in the corner.
Absolutely.
Everybody in show business.
Yeah.
Like, literally I remember somebody, like, when the party is so crowded, you're literally like chest to chest with somebody trying to walk. And I was chest to chest, and I looked up, and it was Smokey Robinson. and I said, "Well, I met a lot of famous people tonight, but you're the first person I met who's important." And he was like, "Oh, bless you." But we were also we were kissably close. But it would end up me, Bill Maher, and Chris Rock in the corner.
Of course. Yeah.
All the comics would just cluster over in the corner.
Yeah. What are you going to talk to Smokey Robinson about?
And then sitting there with Bill and Chris, and this guy comes up, old guy. He looks like Bela Lugosi from Plan 9. And he's wearing a medal that looks like the Dracula crest. This crazy old guy with his crazy program. And I'm like, holy shit, it's Bela Lugosi from Plan 9. This party has everybody. This guy walks up and he extends in his, "How you doing? Buzz Aldrin."
Wow. Yeah.
Oh my God. First vampire on the moon.
Yeah. I see Buzz often, but I do. Super secret club we're part of.
Uh-huh.
And You know it's
Capricorn One Club.
You know it's Buzz Aldrin because he always wears a T-shirt with the moon on it and a NASA hat. And
Yeah,
he's letting it shine.
Yeah, he's letting it shine. Yeah, he's the Forrest.
There's no
Ackerman of
discreet
being on the
Buzz
moon.
Aldrin.
Yeah, he's the Ron Jeremy of astronauts. He's 100% him.
You know what's funny is I was looking at him once and I'm like, why am I excited to look at Buzz, to be around Buzz Aldrin? And then I realized, well, there's no logical reason, but I went, I'll never meet anyone in my life that was up there on that thing, that was stood on that ball in the sky. And it's just a weird thing going.
The thing that I think about is when they're in the capsule.
Yeah.
It could tumble, like the ultimate teapot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it could do that for eternity because there's no friction. So if something goes wrong, that's how they die. They just get tumbled to death.
It's the worst.
I know.
It's like the rotor from the.
Well, yeah. I think that they had cyanide, like biteable cyanide, like that they could get at if they needed it.
Wow.
And they were also wearing diapers.
Yeah.
Which people forget. First man on the moon, huge achievement for adult diaper wearers.
That's right. They need to jump on that. We don't want to mention it, but we were the first diapers on the moon.
One small step from...
That's the worst part about going to visit NASA is that behind glass, the dirty diapers from space.
One small step.
That's my whole problem with the idea of any of that astronaut stuff is the bathroom issue. Same with a motorhome. I always want a motorhome, but not with a bathroom.
No.
I want a motorhome that gets rid of it.
I had a friend who went down the Snake River on a canoe, and you have to they're so aware of the, you can't poo or pee in the Snake River. And so you literally have a bucket, and then that stays in a canoe at the end. The honey bucket.
There's a dark side to all of life. I love eating, but the other end of it is very unpleasant.
My ex-wife said a really great thing the other day. She said, people are more worse than they are good. People are more bad than they are good.
I don't believe that.
I sometimes believe it.
I don't, because it would be chaos if we were all bad. People do the right thing. People do nice things for other people, but more than people do bad things.
You think?
It would be flipped. We go outside and there would be chaos. And there's not.
There's a lot of places in the world where there is.
I know, but realistically, if you went to Jerry's Deli right now and dropped your wallet, somebody would probably return it.
Yeah.
I mean, most likely. It's not like everyone's just going.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been to some really weird places.
There's always going to be a bad, there's always the flip side of it, but I think people are more, like you look inside yourself, you do more good than bad. Yeah, and I do too. And most people are like that.
So how are you, when you look back on this year, it was such a metamorphic year for you. How do you see yourself as changed?
I exactly what you said earlier. I've learned responsibility and I've learned to control it. I see a situation where I'm going to spin out of control and I get a hold on it because I view it from a different perspective. I really, really do. Not always. It's not 100%. I'm not 100% better, but everything has changed this year. I went from being an overpaid guy with a job of 30 years and just spending all of my money on bullshit all the time to being forced to sell a lot of it to pay my bills and stuff. And it's really been great. I might rebuy everything at some point in time.
Do you sell it on eBay?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to sell stuff on eBay. I don't know how to do it.
But it's been a year of responsibility.
Let me interrupt this question. Is it easy to sell shit on eBay?
Absolutely easy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very, very easy, and it's strangely gratifying because you have a world market, and they take a percentage and stuff.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I have no reason for my creepy crawler.
Yeah, well, it's like, some of the stuff I impulse bought, like I thought I was getting fired at a point like a little over a year ago because my relationship was so bad with them.
Right.
And I'm like, I got an idea. And I just went online and started looking at watches, and I bought a $5,000 watch.
You did what?
That's not even the worst. That's not even close to being my. Yeah, I bought a $5,000 watch, and I remember I was wearing it to dinner, and I told the person, Dr. Drew, I just bought this watch. It was $5,000, and he goes, "That's not even you." And I went, "I know, it's kind of weird. I feel uncomfortable." I sold it to pay my bills, like a few months ago. Yeah. But it's just anything to try to fill this need inside. Anything. Mm-hmm. I'll buy anything, and I still look at stuff to buy that I have no desire for. Nothing. I heard a Maria Callas song at the end of The Sopranos 10 or 12 years ago, and I became obsessed with her in one day, and I bought a photo book of her. I bought her biography. I bought her entire collection of CDs, and I was like, I'm jumping into this too deeply.
You know what Paul Rubens does? He goes on eBay and sees things that he wants to buy, prints the page, cuts out the item, and puts it in a shoebox, and then leaves it for the week. And at the end of the week, goes back and looks through it and sees if any of it he still wants to buy.
That's so much work.
It saves him a lot of money. I end up buying none of it.
You know what Todd Glass did is.
By the way, I just totally named drop Paul Rubens.
I like that. That's pretty good.
Suck it, bitches.
You know what Randolph Mantooth was saying to me a few weeks ago?
Kevin Ty said something to me the other day that really knocked my socks off.
I was talking to Todd Glass about this, and he got rid of a lot of stuff. He liquidated like most of his stuff to simplify his life. And what he did was photograph everything, and he made Apple photo books, and they're on his living room table. And it's just books of shit people have given him.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, people have come over and they see their thing in the book, and they're more happy that it's in the book than upset that I sold it.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, that's pretty interesting.
That's funny.
Keep in mind, I haven't changed completely because I still look at stuff online and fantasize about it. I'm like, when I make money again.
Well, I'm at my apartment. I said my apartment.
Low self-esteem kicking in there.
I have a beautiful
Look at my monthly apartment rental.
I have a beautiful house in Hollywood. Look at my apartment. Look at my what do they call it on that Albert Brooks album? Look at my efficiency villa.
I love this house, man. You're in a quiet neighborhood, yet you're close to everything. Just right down the hill. If you want to go to restaurants and stuff, right onto the freeway.
4 minutes for my kids. Here's the best part. The best part of my house is the ADT
security
park on the side street by my house.
What is that?
That's where they all meet and park, and then they stay there, and then they go out and do the route.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So it's like no one is going to... What house do you want to rob? The one across from the 5 ADT cars. Let's do that one.
I'm sure he would be thrilled with me talking about this, but you may already know it, but Gene Simmons has a police car in his front yard 24/7. He bought a police car and just parked it in front, so if you look over his wall, it looks like the cops are there.
That's pretty smart.
It's pretty good.
You can buy that police car on KissArmy.com. Friend of mine was at a movie, and somebody in the movie, the woman slapped the guy in the face, and he heard behind him some guy goes, "Woman ever do that to me, I'd punch her in the face." And he turned around, it was Gene Simmons talking to his son. Good Lord.
I was very excited to meet Gene Simmons the first time and very upset the second. I mean, not upset, but he was at the Improv one night, and I got to talk to him, and we had a really nice conversation. Then he came back the next night, and it was the most garbage show we've ever had.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, should I just go to him and go, you'd be better off if you guys just went across the street and ate Mexican food or something, because this is not, it's like, it was an amateur night show. Yeah. And he never came back after that. But I remember he's like, oh, could you introduce, first night, hey, I'd like to meet Sarah Silverman. And I'm like, okay. Now, I could have this story wrong, but it was very loud. And I went, Sarah, this is Gene. And he was shaking her hand, and he goes, I have some friends in the adult entertainment industry that would like to get in touch with you. Now, I could be wrong about that, but I swear that's what he said.
That all tracks.
And I was looking at her like, well, I don't know him. Yeah. I don't know him. I just met him tonight. I was a fan because I was
married to Shannon Tweed, isn't he?
Yeah.
She's an adult, was.
Yeah, yeah.
She
seems to have a good head on her shoulders, except for the whole
being married to Gene Simmons.
Yeah, now that I take it back. I'm sorry. It's like Melania Trump. She seems all right, but no.
To a goblin.
Yeah, exactly. Nah, she's not all right. There's something happening there.
So what are you looking at 2019? Where's Mike Carano in 2019?
I'm looking at progressing on my being responsible for myself and getting off my ass, because this has been
what are you doing for money now?
I'm still selling stuff, and I'm doing little jobs now and then for people. And it's hard to be a hustler and put yourself out there and say, I want to do this for money and stuff. It's really hard, but it's letting go of pride in a way. And that's good, because who am I fooling? Like, I quit my job where I was way overpaid and I don't make any money. And I spent all the money from the movie, and I still owe him a movie. But, you know, I will say that Paul, the guy who's paying for the movie, Paul Ollinger, has had a big impact on me because he flew out here for a meeting like 3 months after we started, and he just went, your life is chaos. And he came into my place, and I have all the Star Trek stuff and all my toys and everything. And he goes, how can you work with all this stuff? Or like all this? And he's the one who got me on this financial idea of taking responsibility, and it's working.
And there's also the decluttering book, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
What's it called?
It's great, yet it's also sad. I hired a life coach, and she would make me give away stuff every single week. And we took 3 giant boxes to a Jewish Women's Foundation or something, and I was angry at her. I was like, why am I throwing this stuff away? I got a great write-off, but I also came home after being angry, and I walked inside, and it was such a relief. I had 3 huge boxes of toys that were just sitting in corners piled.
Yeah, no, I'm always...
Yeah, I'm still keeping stuff. I'm still keeping my Evel Knievel stuff, my $6 million man stuff. I'm still, you know, I'm keeping the Star Trek chairs, and I'm keeping, you know...
stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just... I don't need this. I don't need this.
Well, like Paul told me, he goes...
Most important question. Was your life coach hot?
She was hot. And even worse than that is after the first, I knew her a long time ago. She used to work.
I have a life coach.
Yeah.
And I just saw him eating out of the dumpster behind CBS.
Don't be like me. And you're like, here's $100. My life coach was somebody I knew a long time ago when I worked on a TV show, and she worked on another TV show. And I remember.
Do I know her?
I don't not want to say who it is yet.
No, I'm just that's.
You might. I don't think so, but you might. Okay. And in the 90s, I invited her over one night, and we just laid on my floor and listened to music. And then she left. And now it's 2018, and she came over, and we did our little session, in which she talked about how she does this and what she does, and she's very attractive. And then at the end of it, she goes, you remember when I came over to your apartment in the 90s? I went, yeah. She goes, I came over there to have sex with you, and you just kept talking and putting on music. And then it got late, and I left. And I was like, I had no idea. She goes, the only reason I came over was to have sex with you. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. But that's, left me with an uncomfortable next 8 weeks of life coaching.
So now
I know you're married and have kids, and you've made it crystal clear we're not having sex. I'm also convinced my therapist flirts with me. Well, so my mental problems
and Duran is also.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was convinced my therapist was flirting with me, and we share a common friend. And I told her she's definitely hitting on me. She goes, "Nah, she's not. She's not." But then I also thought
she's a therapist. She's not hitting on.
I also thought. One night when Dr. Drew invited me over for dinner, and it was just him and I and his wife, that they were trying to have a 3-way. So that wasn't true either.
I'll tell you, I have a friend of mine, a young woman, who worked on our show in Atlanta. And she was talking to her friends about dating stuff, and I was eavesdropping.
Yeah.
Because I don't know it. I don't know that world.
Here's the thing.
Learn.
It doesn't matter how old you are as a man. Listening to women talk about anything is fucking fascinating. I mean, about relationships.
She was saying that she gets hit on by couples all the time.
And I don't like that.
It was just like.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that to be my demo for people who like.
She doesn't do anything about it. She was horrified, but it was just like.
I'm not thrilled with my podcast demo of people that hit on me either, which is like 16-year-olds and married women.
Right. I only get long haul truckers.
That's not too bad. Let me tell you one thing that happened in 2018.
We don't plan this shit. Oh yeah, great.
That really sums it up for me. Aside from me positively changing mentally, Burt Reynolds just died.
Yep.
And I made a home movie documentary about him. So people were calling me and asking me about my feelings about that and stuff. And I was recording my podcast on my phone, and I was taking a side street to avoid the cops because I had my phone up to my head.
Right.
And I literally was just rambling about Burt Reynolds. And I went, all my childhood heroes are gone. The saddest part about this is everyone I liked as a kid is dead, and it makes me feel old. And I go, they're all gone. Everyone. There's not a single childhood. I swear to you. I'm in the middle of saying that, and I look to my left, and it's fucking Shatner in a Porsche. And I was like, I've never seen him in the wild. I've never seen him, except for like at conventions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, that was strangely magical the way I'm yelling into my phone about all my childhood heroes are dead, and I look over and there's Captain Kirk.
Other podcasts reach for the sky. Dana Gould Hour.
We barely try.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
I'm a DJ, I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out! Peace out! You want